Wait, 6. Oh, you got 6:01, okay. Maybe that clock's slow, okay. Okay, well, being 6:01, we'll call the meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting will be recorded for broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. The agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Our first appointment, if you want to sit up here, that's fine. Go ahead. I think that'd be good. Our first appointment is at 6, and Johnson Roberts Associates. Welcome, gentlemen. Just a couple words before we start. What we would like to do this evening is to give you folks an opportunity to give a presentation. 15 to 20 minutes is what we're hoping for. And after that, the board members will have an opportunity to ask some questions. And then if we have any questions from the audience, we'll take those if there's time at the end as well. And I thought what we might do is just kind of go down and introduce ourselves first, and then we'll let the gentleman dive right in.
Tanner Cole, I'm the planning board's representative on the committee.
Dave Passios, Finance Committee Representative.
Mike Mackin, community member.
Greg Roy, I'm a community member and the chair.
Brian Leighton, school committee representative.
Damon McQuaid, representing the Board of Selectmen.
Heather Lemieux, town manager.
Great. And I'm Stu Roberts from Johnson Roberts Associates. And this is Phil O'Brien from Johnson Roberts Associates. So we did put a presentation together. We thought we'd talk a little bit about our firm, a little bit about some of our experience, and then we want to talk about your project. Is the third one. We are about a 13-person architecture firm. We've been in business now for 22 years, I think, and really focusing on work for communities. And we'll talk some more about that. I have been a practicing architect now for, coming on 40 years now. Really focusing on public work, probably for the last 30 years or so of my career. Prior to starting this practice, I'd been with TAP A and Associates for about 10 years, and Phil had been at TAP A as well, as was Jeff Davis. He was actually the CEO of TAP A for a while, so we're kind of a little TAP A spinoff. As I said, I've been a practicing architect now for a long time, really focusing on public work. And Phil and I had worked together at TAP A together for about probably 7 or 8 years prior to starting this practice. So the two of us have been working together now for almost 30 years. Yeah, a long time. I came from the Midwest, came out here to go to school, and discovered that architecture was what I really wanted to do, and it's been a great fit for me. We've done all kinds of projects, new buildings, renovations and additions. You would know us because we did the library. We'll talk about that maybe just a little bit. And Phil, why don't you talk about your background a little bit?
Well, I haven't been doing this as long as Stuart, but maybe it's over 30 years that I've been doing this. I'm a Wentworth grad. Part of the reason I went to Wentworth is because of the kind of hands-on education that they have there. And that is kind of tells a lot about the kind of focus that I have as a principal at the firm. I write our specifications. I do a lot of our on-site work. I do a lot of our on-site investigations. I really like to dig into the nuts and bolts of it. Stuart and I think, have a great working relationship because I think we complement each other so well. I think, we've been working together for 30 years. It's working out pretty well. Stuart and I both worked on the Lunenburg Public Library a long time ago, and we'd love to have the opportunity to work for the town again.
So in addition to the two of us, there are other people in the office who'd be on the project. Natalie Aaron Gross, who's been with us for 17 or 18 years now, who's certainly a key person in the office, would also be involved in the project as well. And you'd see Phil and I at most of the meetings. I'm not a principal who disappears. I'm actively involved in the project. So as I said, we've been in business now for 22 years, basically, really focused on doing public sector projects. Because we do so much public work, a lot of our work really focuses on community outreach, and I would say we're a very collaborative firm. We're collaborative within the office, and we try to do projects where we really reach out to the larger community to build support for a project. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about that in a moment. I think we have a reputation for doing buildings that fit their communities well, that look like they belong there. We have experience with high-efficiency buildings and LEED standards, and I think we have a great track record in terms of cost control. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And I think that's due to the fact that we do pretty high-quality construction documents, so our percentages of change orders, I think, are very low. Phil is kind of heads up our technical excellence in the office. He writes our specs in-house and is kind of the go-to person for building technology issues in the office. So just to expand on a couple of those points a little bit, building types. We really, I would say 99% of our work probably is in the public sector. And we really started out doing lots of libraries. We probably diversified a little bit over the years, even since we did the library here. So we're doing, we've done public schools, private schools, higher education. We've done a number of town halls, both renovations and new town offices, public safety facilities. We're doing a bunch of fire stations now in communities around the state, and we've done a few religious facilities. So I say the thing that kind of ties all our work together is that we really work with communities. That's really the focus of our work. It's working with a building committee that has a diverse representation. That's the kind of client that we really like to work with. Community engagement. Because we do so much public work, we really believe in community engagement very strongly, and we would take direction from you as to what form that should take. But we've done all kinds of things, from having designed charrettes or public TV programs, local access. I think we did a local access for the library here. We do all kinds of online and print materials to help inform the public as to what's up with the design process. Computer models. We're now getting into virtual reality, where we'll do projects and put on the virtual reality goggles and let people kind of walk around the building. And then, of course, support at town meeting for basically all of our projects. We will support you however is appropriate at town meeting, whether that means us making a presentation or supporting you with the materials that you need to make a presentation at town meeting. That's, of course, part of what we do. I think it's important for a successful project really to have a concerted effort at doing community outreach so that everybody in the community knows what's going on and is informed. And it's not something we think you do just before you get a vote. It's really something that we need to do throughout the process till the end of the project to make sure that the community knows what's going on during construction, for instance. So we believe in that community engagement very strongly. I think we've also have a great track record in terms of cost control. Our average projects, when we bid them, come in about 96% below where the estimate was. That's right where we'd like to have it, just a little bit below. And we've had a great track record in terms of bringing projects in. There's kind of a whole list of them. You can't see them there, but Lunenburg, actually, the library is one of them on here. Our average change orders, too, we're usually under 1% in terms of non-owner initiated change orders. And so that's with renovations and new construction. So that accounts for all the kinds of unforeseens that every project will have. So we think that's a very good track record. And I think that's really due to the kind of quality control we put into our construction documents. So this is a record we're really very proud of. Project team. You can't even see the text on here, but we have a bunch of consultants. You can I'm sure read them in your proposal. But the three of us that I mentioned, myself and Phil and Natalie, would be the people at our office who would really be heading up the effort. We have Kim Ahern, is a landscape architect that we have worked with many times before. We have our Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers are Garcia Galusca de Souza. We've done probably 90% of our work with them, and I've been working with them for about almost 40 years as well throughout my career, and we think they do a great job. Our structural engineer is Roman Garacino. They also have done virtually all of our work. They worked on the library. And we're using PM&C as our cost estimator. I believe they were the ones who did the cost estimate for the TAP-A study. Even though those were very preliminary estimates, we've had very good luck working with them on our cost estimating. So that kind of rounds out what we have for the project. Talk a little bit about some of our relevant experience. Put the library up, just because it's like right next to the building we're working on. I have to say, this is of all the libraries, I think we've done 30-some libraries, this is actually one of my favorites. It has my favorite children's room that I've ever worked on. This is a project we're very proud of. And I couldn't resist putting this slide in. I don't know whether you can make it out, but the slide on the left is from the groundbreaking, where we outlined the building and had everybody from the community come and stand on the site. And I'm standing back there in the back someplace, and then just kind of contrasted with the library next to it. Kind of a nice way to engage the community in a project. So that's always been a favorite slide. We've done several town halls, both new town halls and renovations and additions. Sturbridge, there were 2 historic buildings there that we had to do really complete gut renovations, including pulling the floors out and doing new structural floors inside the existing shells. So these were both pretty substantial renovations. But when we put them back, we tried to bring back some of the character of the original buildings. We've laid out lots of town offices. We've done a number of them with these service counters going into corridors, just because it's a really efficient way. We think it helps promote safety within the building. It helps promote communication between departments. So that's obviously one of the options we'd want to talk about as we got into your project.
That's as opposed to the standard model of down the hallway, into the door, and then you get to the counter. By bringing the counters out to the corridor space, you save a little room, it's a little more efficient, and it opens the building up, and the different departments can communicate with one another a lot better.
Just another example, Wyndham Town Hall is another renovation that we did. We also recently worked on the Dracut Town Hall, which is a brand new town hall. So we have a fair amount of experience with town halls, town offices, record storage, those kinds of things. We've done a few renovations. I just put this one in because it was a renovation of a gymnasium, just so you'd know that we have some experience in that as well. Talk about your project specifics a little bit. You've already had 2 previous studies that were done. You can make out the aerial photograph and then the plan from the most recent study, which basically on the site, you're looking to do some demolition of the existing building, I understand, and then potential for creating some additional parking on the site, which would support the activities that are going to happen inside the building. So just looking at the existing building after we've taken the little temporaries off the back, I think there's lots of good space. The building is in fairly good condition, and I think it lends itself well to reuse. The proposals have been to leave as much of what's there as possible and kind of clean things up a little bit. I think the fact that you have all these entrances that come in different places and ways to section the building off, I think are going to work well when it comes time to do the planning, the final planning. The latest proposal really zoned the building, I think, in a fairly efficient way. So we just took their plan and colored it because it makes it easy to see all the functions in the building. But you can see the green is all the town offices, and obviously I think that's a great location for it. It works well. It can be split off so that you could have separate access for the blue areas that are the community areas, the green areas that are the town offices, the yellow, which are the other kind of community functions, the cable, the school department, and then the brown areas up at the top, which are at this point undefined, and I understand you might be leasing some space out. And then as we look at it, I mean, one of the advantages here is we have enough entrances coming into the building that each one of those pieces really can work fairly independently, and we could have a lot of security control, I think, within the existing building. So I think the general approach, the general planning, looks like it works pretty well. The thing that we would want to get into is a lot of the detail planning. We have done lots of programming. I didn't mention it, but we've done programming for pretty much all of the municipal kinds of facilities that we've worked with in the past, including programming for town offices. We noticed that you have record storage, but it didn't call for a vault space in your program, so that's another thing we'd want to go over with you to see whether you really needed to have a vault that would meet the state standards of having a 6-hour vault for clerk's records. So there's some of those things. We'd like to go over issues in terms of perhaps opening the corridors up a little bit to get that better communication, or maybe some service windows in the corridors. We need to get a better understanding exactly of how all of the other spaces, like the cable TV, how they want to use their space, and talk with the school department to get a little bit more information. And that would all happen, obviously, very early in the process as we look at design options. But I think the basic concept is a strong one, and what needs to come in this next phase is really working out the details.
Just in the kind of, in a general sense, thinking about how folks are going to use the building when they come to visit. Somebody's going to come and they're looking for.
If you could use the mic, we can hear you, but
I'm sorry.
it's for the tape at home.
I'm sorry.
about that.
It's just one of those things that we'd recommend is thinking about how different people are coming in the building to use the building, and what their task is. If they're coming to get a building permit, or if you're coming to pay your taxes, or if you're coming to go to a public meeting, or if you're coming to meet the superintendent. All those things have kind of different routes potentially, and there may be ways to kind of gather things together and take advantage of those efficiencies within the building as well, so that the building just works better for you and for the folks that are coming to visit you.
Now, this one you really can't see. I did put a schedule together just to talk about how to approach the project. You identified a schedule in your RFP that it's a fairly aggressive schedule, but it's one that we think that we could meet. I think if you could read this, you'd see that each one of these are the different tasks that you referred to in the RFP. The little dots going across the top, there's the first one up at the top is a kickoff meeting, and we'd want to do that as quickly as possible after selection. And then those first three kind of bars, those are kind of the background information, so that's doing program confirmation, looking at the existing conditions, and kind of reviewing the studies that were done before. So during that time period, we would be meeting with local departments out here, really trying to gather as much information as we can about the existing building and about the programming. We know you've got a good programming study that TAP-A provided. Our approach would be to come in and kind of review all of that. Things change over time, new things happen, so we just want to confirm to make sure that we're on track with the programming, and that would happen really in the first week. We've outlined really about 2 weeks for that first work to happen. While that was happening, we also would go take a look at the building just to confirm all the things that Vertex found in their study. They did a very detailed study. We'd really just be going through to kind of verify what's in there and make sure that we understand everything about the existing building. We'd also, our engineering consultants, GGD, would be taking a look at the building as well. We'd be going through with them. And then just looking at all the other information that you have about the buildings. And that would happen in the first 2 weeks. Then really following that, in about the next, it's probably about 6 weeks, is really the design process. So we would be, as I said, we're a very collaborative firm, so we like to come in with different ideas, and we would like to we'll maybe try to shake things up a little bit. I usually tell people we like to come in with different options. And I tell them if we don't come in with at least one you don't like, we really haven't looked at the whole range of things. So our approach would really be to really work with the building committee to really test all the options to make sure that the one that we have is the right one for Lunenburg. So that would happen in a number of stages. As you see the little dots at the top, normally I would say we'd want to meet every 2 weeks, but I think we're going to need to meet just about every week in the first part of the process. As we work through options. So I have about 3 meetings or so through to look at coming up with a kind of final layout plan, so that we do an initial plan and you'd have a couple of chances to look at it. And then beyond that, we have a couple more meetings where we'd be doing refinement. Then at the same time that we're doing that, we're going to be thinking about the implementation plan, your temporary facilities, all of the other things that go along with making it a successful project. And then down at the end is the cost estimating phase. It'll take our estimator about 2 weeks probably to come up with the estimate. In addition to their estimate, we obviously would take that and we would come up with a project budget. So we'd take that construction estimate and add all the other soft costs and furnishings and whatever else needs to be in the project, so that we'd be able to give you a project number that's a comprehensive, that includes everything. And that would happen in that last 2-week period. We're also, during that period, we're going to be doing a final report, so you'll have a nice clean document that we can have the documents, the process, and all the presentation materials and whatever we determine we need, because we know we'll be going to town meeting at some point, which I didn't put on the schedule because I'm not sure when that's happening, but I assume it's fairly shortly after this effort. And we'll put together all of the kinds of presentation materials that you need for town meeting presentation. We also would suggest you might want to we have a number of public forums down here. Those are kind of the 3 dots at the bottom. I usually like to suggest that we start them, before the project is done, but after we've done some analysis, so we kind of know what the options are. So that would be the first one. I have another one kind of when we're wrapping up the final design part, and then I'm suggesting a third one that would happen sometime before town meeting. It's kind of a pre-town meeting kind of information process. Once we know the construction number. I think those, I have to say, we do enough public work that we see our job, it's not just to hand you a set of drawings, it's to support you however we can to help you make the project a reality. So whatever it takes, we are happy to do. It's not uncommon that if a project doesn't make it through a town meeting, we're happy to come back again for the next year and try again. Where we see our job, our job is to help you make it happen. It's not just to do the architecture and the engineering work. So that's part of the commitment we make to the projects we have. Okay? So last slide, sort of the why we think we're right for this. If somebody asked me quickly to describe our firm, I would say that we design buildings that communities can be proud of. That's what we'd like to have. We think you're proud of your library. We're certainly proud of the library. And we like to, for all of our projects, to be buildings that communities can be proud of. And for a community to be proud of their project, I think they have to work, they have to be attractive, and they need to be cost effective. If we fall down on any one of those things, it's not the success that it could be. So buildings that work, it really means that we've spent the time to talk with people in town to figure out what the needs are, that we get the programming right, that we've met all the needs of the various departments so that we can come up with a plan that's a functional plan that serves the community's needs. It needs to work. If it doesn't work, you're not going to be proud of it. Next is buildings that are attractive, right? So we have a track record, I think, for doing projects that fit in with their surroundings. We certainly feel like the library does. And even on a project like this, it's a renovation. You want people to walk in the building and really feel proud when they walked in. Not that it's just kind of an old school that you've, kind of painted up and put people into. We want to make them feel like it's worthy of the dollars that they put into it. So we want to come out of this with a building that's attractive as well. And then finally, buildings that are cost effective. You can have a beautiful building that works great, and if it's over budget or whatnot, it's obviously a problem. We've done plenty of public work, and I think we have a great track record for bringing projects in on budget and on time, as I showed from the analysis. And I think that's an important component, and so obviously that's one of the concerns that I think you have in undertaking a project like this, that we do it in a cost-effective manner that's going to bring the most value to the town. And if we can do all three of these things, we think you'll have a building that the community will be proud of, which is what we'd like to do. So that's my presentation. You can take questions.
Great, thanks very much, appreciate it. So I think we'll just kind of go down the table, if that's acceptable to you, Tanner, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that formal, but if we give everybody a shot, and then we can kind of round robin it at the end. And then if there's time, and any questions from the audience, we'll take them at that time. Sound good?
So we're going to start with
Yeah, we'll start with you.
standard questions.
Yeah, why don't you start with that?
Let
and then
everybody go.
And then you can, well, no, you can ask others if you want, but I'm just saying that doesn't need to be the end of your turn.
Okay.
Go back to you afterwards.
All right. So could you walk us through a previous project where you were involved in a municipal renovation involving multiple town entities that's similar to our project, where we have town offices, community space, school needs, all under one roof?
That would be a good one. Marshville, maybe? Yeah, sure. This is, we did it's a smaller project, but in some ways it's has all the same components. We did a project in Marshfield, which is adjacent to their library, which had moved into a shopping center. So we were renovating an old shopping center. The library was already in there, and they had some additional space that we used, that we renovated for use by the library, and then a bunch of other community organizations. There's a food pantry, there's an additional meeting room, recreation. I don't know, Phil, why don't you talk about the process?
So there's an existing building that the town purchased, and then they renovated a portion of it and added on to it to do their library in the 80s. There was a small section of it, when I say that, it's probably 8,000 square feet, that was still left over, empty. The recreation department had been kind of rattling around in there for a while and using the space basically the way it was. They wanted to renovate that space, create a new meeting room for the library. So we had to connect into the library through the wall that was between those two spaces, provide access to the library as well as provide access from the exterior. So you'll have some similar situations here where you're trying to provide security for one department while you're still allowing access for public meetings in the evening and so forth. You'll have some similar things here. We needed to provide access to both. They wanted the recreation department to still have some space in there, and they wanted a gymnasium type space. It's in the same building as a place where you might want to have a quiet meeting for a library, and so we needed to find a way to get those things to work. They also had a food pantry that had lived for a long time and served the community in the basement of a church, and the flooding and the mold was eventually got to the point where they couldn't live there anymore and they needed to find a new spot. And so they decided to give them a portion of this. And the last portion of it was their adult education programming specific to the special needs department in town. So there's a special needs department at the schools, and when the kids graduate out, there's certain of those adults need some additional help to kind of get training, to get into the workforce and so forth, and there's some educational facilities there. There's a conference room that's associated with that. The conference room is available to the recreation department. It's available to the special education folks. It's available to the library. There's a lot of different needs and uses that are happening inside the same building. So it's very similar to the kind of things that we're doing over there, and we're able to put that together for them and then bring that in on budget. And that was built, that was probably 2 years ago, right, that we finished that building for Marshfield. I think that's a pretty good example. We've certainly done multiple departments and other projects, but that's a good example, I think.
Okay. How many square feet was that project total?
I think, well, with the library is about 11,000, and then this renovated space was about 8,000. I mean,
Okay.
But because it was so much in such a small spot, I think it's a good example and it's very current.
Yeah, well, that one's certainly smaller than yours. We've done other larger ones, but that one's a good example because it had so many different agencies in it, so.
Thank you.
Okay, before I get to the standard question, one thing that popped in my mind as you were talking about that project, with that mix in the building, did you have to deal, or were you able to deal with sectioning off the building for security reasons The program you mentioned sounds very similar to the ACE program that is presently in the building that we're talking about.
Yeah, we did end up sectioning off the building and providing access and control from the different departments. They wanted the food pantry to be kind of treated like a tenant. So those folks needed to have access into the main space, the kind of public space inside the center portion of the building, so that they could use the toilets and get access to the janitor's closet and so forth, but they needed security. So there's a security point there. They have to press their code in order to be able to get in. The same thing happens from the library side. We actually created a small corridor that serves the library and kind of blocks access from the public, so they can't get back through into the library unless the librarians are taking them in. So this is a meeting room where folks can get through from the library, and then they can exit out after the meeting. If they want to get back into the library, they need to be taken back. So it's very kind of complicated the way we had to set this all up. Each of the different departments had their own keypads. There's kind of a general opening code that they use at the front doors, and then there's different codes to get into the different departments. Some folks have access to multiple departments, like the ACE program, for example, might have access to the conference rooms, obviously to the toilets, and to the meeting room, but they might not have access to the recreation department, and they don't have access to the food pantry, right? All that needs to be policed, and we worked with the town of Marshville in order to make sure that worked.
Thank you. Very thorough answer. With the age of this building, it was built 1952, 53. Definite concerns with remediation of hazardous materials. The formal question is, can you verify that your proposed scope of work will include a complete hazardous materials assessment?
We certainly can do that, and as I recall, it wasn't mentioned as part of the RFP, so we didn't include a consultant in here, but we've worked with a number of people. Who would you suggest? Probably Universal. We've done a lot with, and we'd be happy to include them in and do the hazmat as well.
So if we were to bring it forward and you went into negotiations with the town manager, that would be part of the project right up front?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Could you talk a minute about your approach to delivering cost effectiveness within the project? There are several spots along the way where things go right or go wrong. Could you kind of walk us through how particularly different end users may have different ideas about what their needs are and how we bring a project in that's cost effective?
Yeah. So
It's as much about negotiating the larger.
Exactly. So really, a lot of the kind of expectations are things that we would be dealing with when we're really in the programming phase. So that's part of why we structured the schedule the way we did, where we'd come in and do some interviews early on, and then we'd have a chance to sit down with the building committee between those interviews and finalizing the building program so that we can compare back and forth. The other thing that we sometimes do, we do on all kinds of projects, is you kind of take what the request may be for square footage and compare that back with some kind of standard. So if somebody's asking for, too much, we can kind of try to identify that a little bit. Also, I think critical in the initial phase is when we're looking at the existing conditions, that we have you've got a good study, but we really need to go through and take a look at it again, because we don't want to be throwing things away that we should be keeping, or keeping things that we should be throwing away. So we want to come up with some of those decisions in the beginning of the project. Otherwise, it's not going to be as cost effective as it can. And there may be some choices that are made early on relative to spending a little bit more but saving some money down the road in terms of maintenance or functionality or various things. And those are all things that we'd want to deal with early on in the project. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I would just add that we've done this a lot, and we've interviewed a lot of different departments and staff and department heads and different users. And we find that it's always best to make it clear when we're talking to them that we're going to write down all their needs, and then we're going to discuss their needs with you. And just because they've told us about it doesn't necessarily mean that that what they've asked for will be part of the final solution. We need to make it clear. Otherwise, you'll hear back from the other side. We told them this is what we needed, and we don't have it. It doesn't show in the program. And I think that's an important thing for us to say. It's probably also an important thing that everybody knows that we're coming, and that their expectations are kind of set so that they understand what we're there to do, is to collect information, bring it back to you, and work with you all to make sure that that we're doing the right solution for everybody in each of the departments and for the community as a whole.
Thank you.
Couple of questions. This first one is maybe a little difficult to articulate, but we're wondering if you could give us a sense, maybe as a percentage or a rough percentage, and it certainly doesn't have to be exact, of the projects that you've been in this phase where municipalities have engaged your services in this stage of things, pre-funding of the entire construction budget. How many, maybe as a percentage, how many times have those projects been successfully funded by the communities that you've been working with? And I know that's maybe a difficult
that's a
one because
tough
you've
one.
done a lot of projects.
It's actually a number I'd like to know. I would say, on the whole, it's got to be higher than 50%.
Yeah, I think so.
It could approach 2/3, maybe probably someplace in that range, I would guess. I think we've had a pretty good track record with town meetings, I think partly because of the emphasis we put on community outreach. So part of the issue is, what we don't want to do is go off on our own and design something or with the building committee and then show up at town meeting and show it for the first time, right? So if you're going to have opponents to the project, we want them to show up during the process so we know what the issues are so that we can address them. And I think we've been fairly successful at that. We recently, as a case study, we're doing a new combined police and fire station in Essex, and we went to 2 town meetings there. Essex is a teeny little community. I think the population's 3,500, and they were looking for, what's the total number now? It's like 22 million, right?
Project cost.
So that's a big whack for a little community. But we were successful in getting the vote for the design funds and for the construction funds. And we had numerous public meetings to try to engage the community and get the community to turn out, see where the opponents were, get them out so that we could deal with any issues that the project might have early on. And so I think that community engagement, it really pays off, I think, when it comes to getting approvals at town meeting.
Failed a couple times in the past.
Oh, yeah, they'd failed, I think, two or three times before in
With
terms
other
of.
folks.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As you mentioned in your presentation that that our project schedule was aggressive, but that you felt that it was doable. Are there specific things in the specific phases that you're worried about in terms of, components of that could bump it, could cause us to not be successful in delivery?
So I think it always really comes down to the amount of time that we put into the design phase, right? So the design phase usually isn't really governed by how long it takes us to do the drawings. It is governed by how long it takes the community to come to consensus about what the right direction is. This is fairly aggressive. So I think we have something like 5 or 6 weeks, so it's not a lot of time. So we want to make sure that we do our community outreach during that time period and that we have enough back and forth with the building committee to make sure that we have a viable solution. So if you had more time, that's probably where I would put it, because normally we'd meet like once every 2 weeks, just because once a week gets to be, you can burn a committee out if you do that for a long time. So once every 2 weeks is usually a little bit better, but that doesn't give us enough back and forth given your time frame. That's why we need to do those weekly meetings. Yeah.
Having not been able to see the fine print on the schedule.
Okay, I should have brought that out. Sir.
What date does your schedule arrive at?
So I matched all the dates that you had in your RFP. So
Okay.
we're done at, I think it's April 30th. There's some other dates that are in there, and so I'm just really matching what you had indicated. And I'm assuming that you're doing this schedule because you're trying to make a town meeting.
Town meeting's the first
Exactly, that's
Saturday.
what I was assuming, so.
Saturday in May.
So you had mentioned doing the specs in-house, you also mentioned sub-consultants. What percentage of work presented in your response to the RFQ would be performed by sub-consultants?
So usually, just, I mean, as a rule of thumb, if you're building a building, like for construction, about a third of it probably goes to consultants. During this phase, it's probably going to be a little bit less than that because it's a little bit more design-heavy. So I would guess it might be 25% or something like that would be performed by our consultants, and the other 75% would be performed by our office.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else? No. So other than our aggressive time frame, are there any other challenges that you see to our process here?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you know, you've got a great place to start from in terms of the programming and the existing building conditions survey that have been done. So that's a great place to start from with that information. The building itself, I'm sure there will be some surprises along the way in a renovation of any building built in 1952 or 1953. I don't know what those issues are going to be. But the building itself, from what we can tell from the reports, looks like it's in reasonable shape. Yeah, it has the kind of typical things that it needs that you'd expect. There's some masonry that might need a little help and a couple of little issues, but overall the building seems pretty good, and it seems like that it would be a good candidate for renovation. So I don't really see any. Did you look through reports? Anything that you see that?
No, it's not, I'm not worried about the things that you've already identified. Your building is from the 50s, right? And I've looked at a lot of buildings from the 50s, and some of the things that I keep an eye on when I go in and look at a building of that age is I'm looking for transite, which is concrete made with asbestos. And it was very popular in the 60s, the 50s, and they used it for ductwork, underground ductwork. They used it for roof decking. They used it for a lot of things. And it depends on whether or not you have any of that. I think hazardous materials report is going to identify that stuff, and then how difficult it is going to be to deal with it is going to be another case. If your roof deck is made out of that, anytime you go near it, right, you're going to it's going to be a problem. It's not as easy to just take it all off. There's probably not enough money in the world to take it all off. It'd probably be cheaper to take the building down than to try to remove the deck off the roof if that was the case. So it's the things that we don't know about that are a little bit more concerning.
Anybody else? Feel free.
Quick question. Yeah, in the examples that you gave here in your proposals, I noticed that these projects are relatively small compared to the square footage of this building. Can you mention any other buildings? I'm sure this isn't all you've done, so I'm assuming there's hopefully some larger buildings that you've worked on.
So I would say the bulk of our projects probably are, you know, from a dollar volume, are in the $5 to $20 million range. So for instance, we mentioned this new police fire station that we have. That's 22
project cost.
22 million, and I think it's, what's the square footage on it? It's 27,000 square feet, something like that.
24,000.
We're doing renovations. This will be our third project for the Concord Free Public Library. And that one total is about 48,000 square feet. We did a renovation a number of years ago, and now they bought a house next door, and we're hooking the house up with the library to make it bigger, so that when we're done, that one will be about 48,000 square feet. We've had some other projects, new buildings that are up in the 30,000 square feet range. We're working on another library. Littleton is like, what is Littleton? Littleton's 24. So that's a good size. That's fairly typical for us.
Thank you.
Just as an aside, if we could be provided with a copy of that schedule.
I will email that to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Heather, do you have anything?
Do you have any projects similar that, so you're familiar with the access to the driveway where the existing building is. It's off Mass Ave, and it's the primary access for the middle high school as well. So any similar work related where it address traffic and parking related to two primary users?
Yeah, we probably had a number. What's a good example? Can you?
I'm trying to think of one that's more school-like, because we've certainly done lots of them where we shared, you know, from in Wenham, for example.
Yeah, we have shared parking there between police and fire facilities and a museum, which was a big one. So that Wenham Town Hall that I showed you, there's a museum that is next door, and they bring school buses in to go to the museum. So we had to sort out all the
And they shared a lot with the town hall.
the vehicular and the pedestrian traffic with that one. A lot of our projects, many of them would involve working out, traffic for vehicles and pedestrians in various ways, and getting people from parking lots into the building, those kinds of things.
In Littleton right now, in Littleton we're doing the new Littleton Public Library. The Littleton Public Library now is in an old school building. And it's very similar to kind of what you're thinking about. And in that old school building is the town offices, the library, and the Council on Aging. And the Council on Aging uses the gym, and them and the town offices use the auditorium inside the building for meetings and so forth. So they have a very similar arrangement. They all share the parking that sits in the rear of the building, which also shares it with some tennis courts and some ball fields, because it's an old school. We're building a new library on the back side of that site in the woods. And we're going to do that construction while the library, the town hall, and the seniors are all still using that parking lot. And of course, we're going to take a little piece of it during that. And we're going to be rerouting the traffic flow through that parking lot probably at least twice, maybe 3 different times. And all of those plans all need to be included in what we're doing. And we're working that all out right now with the construction manager, the owner's project manager, with the different departments, our civil engineers, and the folks in town, like the planning board and conservation, because there's a wetland setback too. We're working that all out with them right now. And we've got this, the different phases so that everybody will know what to expect and how to manage the traffic as it goes through with temporary signage and so forth.
Could I follow up on that, Heather? Real quick? Two questions relative to that. So, as part of our process, getting to design development, would you have, to the design development phase, would you have those level of details in the package that you'd be providing in your scope of work, or is that something that's more on the next, like for the Littleton example? Because I see that as important, those kind of access issues. I think that's probably why
I think it needs to be addressed now because the cost estimator is going to want to know about it, and it wants to be in the report, that it's part of the plan moving forward. Your implementation plan is going to need to include that. It doesn't have to have all the details that we're putting into the plans right now for the town of Littleton, because that's going to be permanent in the next month. This needs to give you a roadmap of how you're going to get there and what the issues are, and an idea for how to solve them, so when you get to that next phase, you have a good stepping off point. You know what the goals are.
And does your civil scope include a detailed property survey?
It's survey, actually, our civil engineer, the civil engineer we're proposing, I don't think has a survey, but we could certainly do a property survey if you need one. Any of these extra services, the kinds of things that you think you need, we can find people to help you with those and provide those. The issue will be time frame a little bit, because if we call up the surveyor after selection, it might not be till the middle of design before they get out there. So that
Right. And if it snows again, right, they'll just tell us to wait.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Just to follow up on that a little bit more, we've talked about traffic study and detailed survey work. Is that included under the scope of work? In other words, will you be able to get the complete hazardous material survey done, whatever traffic study related stuff needs to be done, and the civil work done, all within the scope of this RFQ?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Should be able to.
Anybody else? Everybody good? Sure? Okay. We very much appreciate it. And I think that we'll be discussing, sort of finalizing our evaluations over the next few weeks. I think it's probably a good timeline. And I think Heather would be in touch with you as we move through that process.
Okay, great. And
I
I
guess,
will,
maybe I should, before we close, do you have any questions of us, that you have of us?
no, usually the question I would ask is what the selection process timeframe would be, and
Yeah.
you just answered that one, so.
You're talking to 2 others, a total of 3?
Yes.
You're doing those all tonight?
Yes.
So, yeah, if you need more information from us, that's great. I will email you the schedule so you can actually read it, and I will also email a copy of the, our PowerPoint presentation, so you'll have that on file in case you want to go back over it.
Send both of you.
I'll send both of those, yeah. We'll send these tomorrow morning.
That's great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. It's a
Thank
great
you.
project. We'd love to be able to help you with
Yeah,
it.
and good luck
Thank
with your
you.
project.
Yeah.
Looks like fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We probably got a survey of the front part of the site.
Yeah, for the library. It's true.
Because one of the issues we dealt with was how to connect into the house and how that connects back out to the road. And I know that we did a little work with your planning board and some of the users in the buildings there to make sure that everybody was happy with the solution that we come up with. It's still working. And the last time I was in the building, it looked like it still was, but
Yeah,
But,
parking lot works.
we know that.
Access.
So I have 4 young kids, and they both love the kids part. So, great work. Oh, I say both. 2 of my youngest are the ones that use it the most right now, so that's why I say. But they've all loved it.
My kids love it too.
That building used to be on the window shades in the River Building.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, wow.
It was painted on the window shades. It was out and we had a wall.
Interesting.
It was a big color.
Huh.
That's kind of where the color scheme from that department comes from.
Oh, interesting.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Format working okay for everybody? Change anything up, or
That's good.
Yeah.
format's okay?
I like how they answer question 4, because it's like, how do they approach that? And try to get 100%, but it's like, it's
So you're right, the answer is more.
it's like the community outreach. What that's the answer.
That was a great thing to hear, hear.
Hear what the responses are. Yeah.
I actually saw the others out in the hallway.
Oh, well, I posted it 4/7, so
Yeah.
I don't think we could go.
Get some time.
I thought about
They
just.
could come in and set up if they wanted to.
Who's to
Yeah,
next?
that's true.
Or you can let them know they can set up if they want.
Yeah.
Mike, who's due up next?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who's due up next?
Yeah, it's,
It's
Heather, did you have any extras? We can
Yes.
hold on to those if you want, that's fine. We can leave a couple extra if you'd like. I just want to have.
Have one to follow
Yeah.
along? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave 2 extra there.
All right, all right.
And you got my card, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
Okay, so there's Lero is a parent company, and then George Rose is this company.
Okay, thanks.
It's a nice setup.
It works. Town hall is on the site. Yeah. I know, I should too.
We have to give some thought to it. Project goes into details.
Our whole team.
Oh, yeah. It's huge.
See,
No.
you have to get up.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah.
come up.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay.
15 minutes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Were you in town today?
Shine can to touch screen. So you can read and it's got markers. You can
It's smartboard.
It's a smart board. It's like a giant iPad.
Yeah.
It's not a projector, it's an actual.
Right.
I'll stand up here.
Yeah, this was some of the new smart boards.
Yeah, so we'll have to.
The computer, basically.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a computer on our.
And then it projects it to once you It's incredible.
I got 7, Greg, when you're ready.
Okay. If you folks are ready, we'll get going. And I thought we'd just give a quick introduction here. My name's Greg Roy, I'm the chair. We'll go through and give introductions, but we'd like to give you folks an opportunity, obviously, to give your presentation, maybe 15 to 20 minutes or so. And then the committee members will have an opportunity to ask some questions, and if we have anybody from the audience, we'll open it up if we have time at the end, if there's any questions. So thought we'd just go through with some introductions.
Tanner Cole, I'm the planning board representative.
Dave Passios, Finance Committee Representative.
Mike Mackin, community member.
Again, Greg Roy, I'm the chair, I'm also a community at-large member.
Brian Leighton, school committee member.
Damon McQuaid, the Board of Selectmen representative.
Heather Lemieux, town manager.
Great.
Take it away.
So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight on behalf of the Giorgio Associates Lero Group and our team, and I will introduce them. We have a slide about what we do on this project. So I hope over the next 15, 20 minutes, you'll get this message that we are a local firm with significant experience in preparing existing conditions, looking at existing documents, feasibility studies, designs for reuse projects, and that we have the resources and the technology from a 900-person company to get this project done, especially for an aggressive schedule project. So I just want to introduce the team. Again, I'm Tom Lamb. I will be the principal. I am the person responsible for every single aspects of the project, and the buck stop at me. And I have this little device that lives with me wherever I go all over the world, so you can reach me anytime. The other key part of my job is to make sure that we keep the ball rolling, that we make sure that your vision is getting implemented, because there are all these details as we move through the process that someone needs to just make sure that we're on the ball and just keep it down the line. So Ed DeSavio, he is our project manager. He is also the lead structural engineer, and Ed has done quite a bit, I won't say how many years of experience, but he has done quite a bit of not just structural design, but building assessments, feasibility studies. And Chris Sullivan, over there, he will be the project architect. He has done a lot of, he's very technically oriented, knows the building code, no accessibility code, so he will be working on the more technical aspects. And Kimberly, over here, she is will be our assistant project manager, and she keeps us in line, making sure the budget and the schedule is moving forward, making sure that our communications with you folks and also with the other consultants or other engineers are all moving smoothly. And Todd Chase, he is our lead mechanical engineer, but he is somewhere in Montana, so we apologize that he cannot be here today. And John Inks, he is with Meridian Associates. He is almost part of the family. I don't know how many projects that we work with John on, but he has done quite a bit of civil work and for towns around the area. And the second slide is, so we actually have more team members, and some of them are not here tonight. David Toe is our in-house cost estimator, and 30-plus years of experience. Brian over here, he is the senior vice president. He is my boss. He runs the New England region. Sean McKenna, he is a structural engineer working for Ed. Frank, electrical engineer. Christopher, he is our QC person, also another building code expert. He will be on the team. Jackie Trainer, landscape architect with Meridian Associates, and again, we worked with them quite a bit. Brad is Hazardous Materials, and Ron, he is here. He is a senior mechanical engineer with us, and so if there's any HVAC problem, just talk to him. Okay, so who are we? We are a full-service firm, and the next few slides, you'll see some of the services that we offered. We are a local, medium-sized company, but we have the capacity from a 900-person company. We've been in the business for 35-plus years, and over the next few minutes, you'll see that we have comprehensive services from design through construction, meaning that, again, with a very rapid-paced project, we have the depth to deliver the project for you. And we believe in long-term relationships, so we have a lot of clients that we are repeat clients if possible, and so we've been doing that for a while. So the next slide just shows some of the projects that we're working on with some of the towns that we're working with. Then we've been doing quite a bit of work in this area, working at Health Alliance Hospital for 30 years, Community Health Connections in Fitchburg, and Haywood Hospital, and Hildreth House. We just finished the feasibility study for the senior center, and we are waiting for town meeting in May. So those are some of the local projects that we worked on. You can see just a list of services that the architecture department that we offer in-house. And the next slide, list of services for engineering. Again, it's all in-house. A lot of times for architectural engineering firms, you have architecture, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, but we have structural in-house, and Ed's office is 10 steps away from mine, so there goes the skyhooks. I can't just do something crazy. And the beauty of that is that we have these impromptu conversations that is not necessarily as a formal meeting, but it's all this added value just because we are working in the same office. And in addition to that, we also have a construction components that we do provide pre-construction services or construction management services, and the value that it brings is continuous project budgeting, because we know we deal with subs, we have the real-time numbers. If we want to look at different components, different solutions, the cost estimator's office is on the other side. And so I just walk over and talk to Dave Toe and say, hey, how much is this going to cost, what's the dollar per square foot, or is this system better than the other system, what's the cost component, what is the maintenance, what are the pros and cons, and Dave can give me that. Again, this is all this extra synergy that we have because we are located together. So for this particular project, some of the key components is building assessments and building project reuse. So what we'll do, and we will describe it in more details, but we're really focusing on the building systems and envelope, what's the building code, accessibility, and the other key thing is accurate existing documents. If you don't have the drawings and we have the technology to put really efficiently to put a set of existing conditions documents together, we have done at least 2 million square feet of renovations projects. Some of them are phased construction out of our 35 years of experience, and we will review the existing conditions from the envelope to the infrastructure just to see what is really like before we move forward. Due diligence is really key. Building needs assessments. A lot of times clients will say, well, we found this property and it's X square feet, will it work? So what we do is actually I was at a situation this morning, a client found a 45,000 square foot building, and so we went with the builder, another consultant, look in the building, and then we understand some of the basic program needs. So we look at the building, see how feasible it is as a physical structure. We talk to the owner and say, well, these are the programs. We think this is going to take X square feet. We merge the two, do a quick space fit, put the cost estimate together really quick, and to see if this is feasible. So that's some of the things that we are really used to doing, understanding, looking at existing buildings and how it fits, how it works with the clients. So.
Thanks, Tom. For the next group of slides, we'll be presenting our project approach in addition to our understanding. Starting with this slide, we understand the project is to perform a comprehensive study and design development service as well as an implementation plan for the Paseos Elementary School to evaluate the reuse for town offices, school use purposes, school administration, as well as community uses, including the cable TV. We do understand, and we read through the 3 previous studies, we understood that there was a preferred option in the 2016 study that was further evaluated with 3 other options in the 2018 study, and one of those options tweaked one of the preferred study from 2016. But what we'll be doing is we'll be revisiting with the town and the stakeholders the use needs and the needs of the community to revise, if needed, those space assessments and how the different use groups and occupancies would fit into the existing building. We would initiate the project after reviewing existing documentation with a kickoff meeting with the board and other stakeholders, and then we begin the process of meeting with the stakeholders, the school department, town hall, community groups, to further develop and refine the project. We typically set up an FTP site for our projects that would give the community and the town stakeholders access. We use it for document sharing, moving around big files, sharing information. The board and other town stakeholders would have the password and such to have access to that. And we can help the town set up on their own town hall website a link to project updates as well, so the community will have real-time access to what's going on. On the next slide. So after the kickoff meeting, as Tom had mentioned, we have a very large bench strength, multidisciplinary firm, AE Services, including specialty services such as hazmat, and our consultants with civil and landscape, as well as our cost estimator. We would all go out to the building as a team. We would go through the building. We would look at existing drawings, look at existing conditions, verify the conditions. Ron and Todd, our MEP engineers, would actually operate any of the equipment to get a sense on, is it near the end of its useful life? Can you get another 10 years out of it? That'll all be part of our initial assessments out in the field to help us gain a better understanding of the conditions and the reuse of any equipment in the building. And the next couple slides are also in our proposal. I won't go right through bullet point, but these are the typical tasks that we would perform on your project, from the structural investigations through the architectural investigations. We have non-destructive testing equipment on the structural side, so we can look behind walls, look above ceilings without doing any selective demo. We have bore scopes and other techniques that can look behind things without doing destructive testing. If there's a need to do destructive testing, we also can do that in-house. We have an in-house materials testing lab as well as construction inspectors. So we have a lot of equipment that we can go out there, do material sampling. If it gets down to checking mortar, checking concrete strengths, if we're doing work outside with the soils, we have all those in-house capabilities to do that type of analysis and testing. The architectural team will look at the accessibility issues, the building code, understanding that there'll be different use groups in the building at different times of day, which ties in with our MEP and security group. So they'll be looking at, as part of our study and recommendations, where to place different groups in the building based on occupancy and time of use, as that relates to security. For example, if the gym's being used at night or on the weekend, you want to restrict the town hall side so that the public isn't wandering into spaces that aren't open on the weekend or at night. So we would look at all that, including restrooms. You want to make sure there's restrooms readily available to the community if they're using the gym or a cable TV studio and such off hours. On the next slide. Again, this goes through our MEP approach to the project. We would have our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, security engineers out there with us, going through all the systems, checking function, looking at the relative building code issues, the stretch energy code issues. A lot of our professionals are lead APs, so we'd look at energy efficient systems if we have to replace anything or add new equipment. Civil site landscape, our team would be out there as well. We understand part of the original study was to remove one of the wings, possibly opening up space for a ball field, more parking. That would all be looked at, as well as vehicle circulation. Also knowing you have a nice campus of other buildings and school buildings in the town hall here, so they would look at it holistically from a campus standpoint as well. We would have regular meetings with the building committee, the town manager, the school department, and the other stakeholders. We would develop, as part of the Phase 2, Phase 3 work, the comprehensive report with the updated spaces, conceptual plans. We would look at other options. We would price up any other options with our in-house cost estimating. If it gets into materials, we like to give our clients good, better, and best as far as systems go. So you can see if you put in, just to use, say, a Ford, or you put in a Tesla, what it would cost for those different pieces of equipment, to give you some good options, some good choices. The same for the civil site, understanding that was another task, I believe task 5, 4 or 5. They would go through the same scenario, same due diligence, looking at pros and cons and options to present costs to the community to make good decisions with. And then the schematic design phase and design development. Understanding this project concludes with design development and also the implementation plan. We would provide updated floor plans, elevations, site plans, cost estimates, building code reviews, and the like, all to meet the town's budget. And then presentations as needed with the building committee, board of selectmen. Tom will talk a little bit later about our video capabilities. We have some of the top of the line video capabilities, animation. We do all our drawings in 3D BIM. Revit is one of the softwares, so we actually can model the building in 3D. The video capabilities, if we have floor plans, we can actually walk the viewer through the building. We have a little video clip we'll play later where you can actually do virtual reality, turn on lights, move furniture around. It's great for public presentations to show the community what the options would look like, both interior and exterior. And then one of the other tasks is the detailed project cost estimates. As Tom had mentioned, With our in-house capabilities, we actually we get solid hard costs. We work regularly with subcontractors. We have an in-house design build group, so we have access to filed sub-bid contractors, different contractors to get real-world pricing, hard numbers, in addition to the soft costs, so the town can budget for town meetings, the entire package, not just construction, but all your OPM services, if there's materials testing, structural testing and inspection, which is required by the building code. So you would get a comprehensive cost estimate based on mass prevailing wage law, because this would be a Chapter 149, or if you chose to go to 149A, CM at risk. And then the implementation plan, which is very important. We have experts in 24/7 facilities in phase construction. We would be able to come up with an implementation plan. We know the building's occupied, so we would look at the existing users, and we would look at the phasing of the actual construction to see where we could shift people around within that building, maintain operations for them while construction's going on, making sure it's safe, there's not dust, there's not noise, and that's something that we would be looking at as part of the implementation plan, getting down to the details of keeping that building operational during construction. And as I kind of jumped ahead with the 3D graphics and computer modeling, as I mentioned a little earlier, and then closing out the design development phase, we would consolidate all those reports. I know the RFP had separate reports for the different tasks. We would do that, giving you separate reports for the major tasks, but we would recommend consolidating it all into one nice report with those reports consolidated, the drawings, the cost estimates, so you have everything in one package. And then just to close out and mention, all of our submittals are reviewed. We have a great in-house QA/QC program. All of the submittals reviewed by independent in-house technical experts. So we would get one of the senior architects, for example, that's not involved with the study, to review the study to make sure that it's comprehensive and we're not missing anything on the scope. And same for all the MEP disciplines and structural. So we have a very thorough QA process. And with that, John Ings from Meridian will talk about the next slide.
Our team has many years of experience, combined experience, shepherding municipal projects through the design process and the funding process. Two of those current projects are Bellingham and the Hildreth House that Tom already mentioned. Both of those projects had a number of architects that were brought on before us, and they weren't able to get together with the town and the program and the budget to get a project moved forward. We came in, we achieved that, and they're now going to a town meeting to get funding, additional funding. We also have a number of key staff in both firms that serve on local boards and committees. That gives us we not only have the experience as consultants, but we now have the people on our team that see it from that side of the table as well.
I'll just be speaking very briefly to a few examples of the projects that we've used the approach that Ed went through earlier. The first example is sort of a more extreme before and after. We turned a dog house, a kennel, into a health center. So on the left you'll see the before, and on the right hand side is the reception area for the 6 offices, 4 shared offices, a conference room, multipurpose room. So this became, a usable space for the community. The next project is it's a feasibility study, conditions assessment for 2 public schools in Tewksbury. We're tasked with assessing their MEP systems, electrical systems, windows, roofing, and to do a detailed assessment on how much the repairs, how involved they would be to get both or either school, brought up to, usable for the next 20 years, 25 years. So this is a comprehensive assessment that we will, use to help them recommend which school to repair or both, and for their students. This example is over on Long Island in Boston, and 16 buildings were no longer used because the island wasn't accessible. They had to take the bridge out of service 4 years ago. So our team came in and did comprehensive evaluations of all the MEP systems, the building envelopes, structures, and wrote a full detailed report for the city so that they could make a good decision as to which buildings to repair when the island becomes inhabitable again. And this is the Harvard Hildreth house that John mentioned earlier. Our approach for this project was because the existing senior center was actually a historic building. The addition we proposed was separated from the building so that we didn't open the can of worms that's involved with working on a historical building. So by separating the buildings, we were able to meet the budget of the town there. This is just a quick example of, we do a lot of phasing, particularly in healthcare, but our objective is always to minimize the impact on operations because they're typically emergency departments that are always operational. So we work closely with our in-house construction team to make sure that the operational phasing is also going to work with construction phasing and logistics in that sense. And on to Tom.
So a few minutes ago, we mentioned that we have this group called the Virtual Design Operations and Construction Group, and these are some of the services that they offer. And we have a 1.38-minute videos. We just want to show you. It's hard to talk about a video, but might as well just go to the next slide. Yeah. So basically, it demonstrates the capability we have, and a lot of the services, especially scanning, converting it to an existing conditions model, is really part of the basic service. And once we created the model, we can turn it into animation and show it during user meetings or town meetings, and we can use the same technology when it comes to working drawings to do coordination, making sure the ductwork doesn't go through beams, things like that. So we have a 10-person group just focusing on developing new technology and making it more user-friendly to the clients as well as the designers and the builders. And so it's not just for design construction, we also get into asset management because we think the easy part is to design it. I think the easy part is to build it, but the toughest part is to operate it when we leave town. So I think we have the technology to really help with understanding what the equipment, what the maintenance schedule and so forth, that can be all tied together electronically. We even have our own drone that, if it's appropriate, fly over the site. And John's firm also has a drone. If you're looking at more of the site piece, sometimes you can just, once you scan it with the drone, we can take the trees out and see what's really happening. So finally, why DeGiorgio and Lero? We're a one-stop shop because of all the services that we showed you, that we can really move very quickly and that we can contact experts in-house even though they may not be listed on the team. We just show you the technology that we have access to, that we are aware and are familiar with the local area. We have done many municipal buildings. We have a double-checking peer review process to make sure that the documents are tight before we send it out. Most of us here are old. We've been around the block too many times, but that's what you get. We're not going to do a bait and switch. It's unique that we have our own construction services, and we are responsive. All of us are addicted to the cell phone thing, and we are committed to answer all the time, maybe too often. And finally, that we are really familiar with building reuse, renovations, and have all the resources that's necessary to move this project forward. And finally, we are not the firm that will have a signature project, but we're here for you, for our clients. We want to be good listeners and really turn your vision into physical reality. And with that, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And Brian will be the MC during this Q&A period.
I have to do something, so.
Great, thank you very much. We'll kind of take turns asking questions, and we'll kick it off with, do you mind starting us again,
Sure,
Tanner?
yeah.
Thanks.
So could you walk us through a previous project where you were involved in a municipal renovation that involved multiple town entities sharing the same space, and what you found as challenges and how you addressed those?
Okay. Ed or Tom? You want to take it first? Yeah. Sure. And for example, the City of Boston project that we showed, that facility historically back in the 1800s was actually a hospital complex, and the City of Boston in 2014 it was being used as a homeless shelter and for some other purposes. So part of the analysis was working with the city to look at options with them on potential reuses of the building. And the focus of that project was condition assessments, full AE services, interior, exterior, and cost estimates, building code reviews for different options for different types of changes in use group. And the city had not yet determined exactly what would go in each building, but they wanted to get a good idea on if we change the use group, say from a hospital user group to a business user group, what that would involve building code-wise and cost-wise. So that's one example. I don't know if you want to take another example.
My example is slightly different. It's more that there are two separate town committees that are not on the same page. So it's a senior center that we worked with, and so they were very happy with the building that is separated from the existing historic building, because once we touch the existing building, we have to bring up the sprinkler system and seismic upgrade and so forth. So we were asked to go to the permanent building committee, and obviously they had a completely different ideas. They thought the building should be attached, and so we worked it out. We went back to the senior center committee and identified what are the key issues and what are the cost impacts, and went back to the permanent building committee. Essentially, we were the messenger between the two committees, and we worked out a happy medium that everybody gave a little, but we were the messenger, and because we understood both issues. So.
Okay. Building we're discussing this evening was built in 52, 53, so there's some definite concerns about the hazardous materials, and the question we formulated is, can you verify that your proposed scope of work includes a complete hazardous materials assessment?
Ed, do you want to take it? I'll be happy to answer that. Yes, we understand.
Take that sentence, and mitigation plan.
In a mitigation plan? Yes, we understand from the previous three studies, it didn't appear that any hazmat testing has been done yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, there hasn't been. We have in-house, and a gentleman that was on the screen, Brett, is a licensed Massachusetts asbestos designer and an inspector. So he would go through the building, and we have additional environmental engineers in the company that could participate in the inspections as well. So we would look at issues, asbestos, we would look at the lead paint concerns, PCB issues, mold, mercury. A lot of the old light fixtures have PCB ballasts. A lot of the old thermostats would have mercury, liquid mercury in it. As you dial up, it helps control the system. So we do have the in-house capabilities to do that, to do the sampling, and then we use Massachusetts licensed laboratories to actually test do the physical testing of the samples. So we follow that, the chain of delivering the samples to the lab and getting the report back. So that could be included and as part of the study reports.
And just to follow up on that question.
Yep.
And the report would give some idea of the preliminary cost estimate for mitigation?
Yes. Our cost estimator has a very good handle on that. A lot of the labs also can give you an idea on cost, current cost to do the remediation. I know your reports had some estimated costs about the remediation. That's always an important number to get because you need to do that work ahead of time before you get into the actual construction. You got to abate the building before the contractor can get in there to do his work. You got to get the asbestos out. Lead paint can be handled differently. You can take out, say, the frame of a door that's lead paint, and you can wrap it and dispose of it differently. So our environmental specialists know the Massachusetts regs and will be able to recommend what to do, as well as they have the information about current costing.
Yeah, we have about a 100-person team that we utilize in-house. So again, no sub-consulting or subcontracting out. The only piece would be the civil and the landscape architecture. So, that would all be done in-house. It would be done very quickly, and we'd make sure it was expedited. So the only thing we would sub out, as Ed mentioned, is the laboratory work. But that's really about it.
Mike, if I could, one more question. With the multiple uses that are being considered for this building, there are some serious concerns about security between the multiple uses, i.e. Town offices with the general public entering the building, school uses with student body in a section of the building, and then community use. Can you give us an idea on your thoughts about security within the building to keep those entities more or less separate as much as possible?
Yep, no, I understand, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern nowadays, and Chris has quite a bit of experience in that area, so he'll speak to that.
Great.
So right off the top of my head, I would think that the, electronic card key access would probably be one of the best ways to do that. We would try to, physically separate areas, the program as much as possible. So, try to put one group of people over here, another group of people over there, another group of people over there. Potentially you could have one lobby that has multiple access points, but you have to have the right card to get into that area. The building has different wings, so, there's a lot of different ways to tackle that. But sometimes when spaces overlap, then the best way is the electronic security.
Thank you.
Chris has extensive experience in that, and with both K through 12s and schools, and also the military background. So there are obviously different levels of security and access, and we could walk through all these to see what the needs are, for the particular use and the different areas and so forth. So we can assess that and give you the most cost-effective and the highest performing system that you need.
So just give us an idea of your approach to ensuring that the project is cost-effective and, that the solution that we arrive at together is the best, most cost-effective solution?
So you're talking about just cost-effective and...
For the project itself.
Okay. Good.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I can repeat it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand the firm's approach to ensuring that the project is the most cost-effective given the program. There's many places where the program can go awry
Sure.
in the process. You mentioned earlier, experience with one group where you needed to negotiate between two groups.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get a bigger picture of your approach.
Let me ask you, just to clarify, are you talking about cost containment on a particular project that you have a certain
cost
budget?
containment, yep.
Okay,
as part of it,
and
yep.
not like based upon the options and the use that you've identified in that effectiveness. This is more...
Cost
Okay.
containment.
I'm a town voter. I'm a taxpayer, so I'm sensitive that whoever is putting a project up, it's appropriate. So when we started a project, we let's say from the very beginning, we may not even have a floor plan. We have a spreadsheet of all the spaces that will come up to X square feet. And at that point, we use something similar as $1 per square foot and just say, day one, maybe day two, this is what it might cost, and we have a contingency factor because we don't have all the details, just to give a rough idea. And as the project progresses, we go from this spreadsheet into test fits into the size of a building. So we have a better sense of what the area is going to be. And so we are still doing $1 per square foot. During this time period, our mechanical, electrical, and structural engineer will look at the infrastructure, especially since we're talking about reuse project. Are there potential risk or capacity that we need to address other infrastructure? So we might add, at that point, we'll reduce the contingency a little bit, but start having allowances for structural upgrade or mechanical, electrical systems upgrade, just because now we have a sense from the experts what we need to do. And as we progress to schematic design, we have more details of the type of spaces. We are still at that point doing $1 per square foot, but once we get to design developments, when we have more details, we go from a narrative from these engineering systems to drawings. Now our cost estimator can put more details on, go system by system, and still not saying, okay, we have X square feet of drywall, not that much, but we go from $1 per square foot to a systems approach, and we reduce the design and construction contingency at that point. Once we go to the construction document phase, we have more detailed information. When we go at that level, we will actually contact the subs, the mechanical subs, the electrical subs, and say, if you were to do this project, how much is it going to cost? So we just get more detail as the project progresses. And the other thing is, at the end of the day, we don't know what the bidding climate is going to be. So a lot of times we offer this bid alternate and say, well, if we can afford this, we can do this or do this. So we set up a series of alternates, and we do that during the design process because it's nice to have everything, but that's unfortunately it's not the whole time. So we started talking to the users and say, what can we compromise on if we can afford this? So we want to make sure that everybody is happy at the end of the day, and surprises are bad things, especially when it comes to cost.
As a follow-up, could you give some idea of the percentage of the projects that come below the estimate?
We are usually pretty much right on. It might be about 15-20% that is a tad below, maybe 3 to 5% below. But the fact is we're using our contingency factors, and we're talking to folks who might actually be building it when we do the estimate. So obviously, it'll be nice.
I guess I'm asking you to talk to the rigor of the estimates versus your actual experience after the bids.
Yeah, I would say pretty on. I mean, it's not like we're over a lot or under a lot. So there's that range of the 3 to 5% above or below.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out also, just to clarify, so we're unique in that we have an architectural design arm of our firm, but we also have a construction arm. So we're used to viewing it from the owners and the contractor's perspective. And so we actually perform design build services. Obviously, that's not going to come into play here. But we're used to designing to and building to a guaranteed maximum price, which you're probably familiar with, a GMP. And with those types of contracts, if we go over, we pay the difference on the construction side. So, for the past 35 years, we've been doing this, either we do design, bid, build, or design, build. But it's really unique in that we have a different perspective on that. We have that capability to get hard bid numbers from our subcontractors and from our construction management arm of the company, which is a little bit different than doing an engineer's estimate, which is a little more theoretical. So, I'd say we're very, very close to our numbers, within percentage points. And we have to be a lot of times because it's a guaranteed maximum price. And if we're over, then we're paying the difference. So again, it's very unique in what we offer because a lot of the other types of design firms, they do a design piece and then they're done. They wash their hands of it. We're familiar with doing design through construction, commissioning, and so forth. So it's definitely a different perspective and viewpoint. So to give you just a little level of comfort there, with what we go through, the rigor, as you asked.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Not to say you can't ask another one.
Yeah, fire away. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, thanks. A couple questions.
Sure.
Interested in hearing your thoughts specifically related to this project, relative to your vision, I guess, or your thoughts relative to community outreach, public forums or that kind of thing, and what types of services you provide for support for, like we're going to need to go bring this to town meeting to get funding. Just interested to hear you talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm going to hand over to Tom on that one, definitely, and I encourage you to speak to some of our references if you haven't already, because Tom's fantastic in this capacity, and I'll let you speak to that a little bit more. Set the stage for you.
Thank you. So the key thing is buy-in, and one of the things that we pride ourselves in, our team really wants engagement, both in terms of the design and engaging the town. So what we will suggest, and we will work with you, the different ways we could do it. We can host different neighborhood meetings, or we can have meet and greet or something about the project, and we can show either may it be a video or just the floor plans or something. But we really want to engage the town so that the residents will feel that they are part of the process. It's not like, oh, it's town meeting time and that's the warrant and we have to vote on it, but they know all along how the project progresses. The other thing is, as suggested, that we can host an FTP site, or we can create a website for the project so that everybody can just see the progress. But I think the key thing is to engage the residents of the town, and we are doing a public safety building in West Hampton right now, and we're going to have meetings with the different firefighters and police officers, even though they are not part of the committee, but again, it's engaging the community. So, hope I answered the question.
Yeah, so just as a follow-up to that, this is probably a little bit difficult of a question, but just trying to get a sense for your, for lack of a better way to say it, your success rate. So, and I know there's a lot of moving parts with that, but when we have a project where we're bringing it to a certain level, we're getting a cost estimate, and you're presenting it to you're on a team where you're presenting it to the town for approval. What are you finding is your percentage there? How does that play out?
So far, I would say 90+%. And one of the examples is actually Chris and I work on a senior center in Bellingham, and so we sent Chris to, after the committee agreed upon on the project, the budget and everything, Chris went to the finance committee twice I was so smart, I wasn't there, so Chris had to go through all the grilling. And he asked all the questions so that we got the buy-in, so the finance committee endorsed the project before we went to the town meeting for a vote. So again, it's really engaging the different parties.
Couple other ones, sorry guys, I got a few. You mentioned a couple times in the presentation that or at least alluded to the fact that we have set before you a fairly aggressive timeline, which I think we knew that when we penned it. What are there any portions of that give you any concern? Are there any portions of your project schedule or inputs from us or things along the way that give you concern for your ability to meet the schedule as we have set?
I wouldn't say concern, because personally we love aggressive schedules, and so the key thing is we haven't had a chance to have a dialogue and find out we know there were some dates that were set, but we really want to have the first meeting and start engaging and find out what materials are available and how fast we can be on site, and we can put a lot of people on site and just expedite the initial investigation to get things going. And if we think that we need to be even more aggressive, we can have multiple meetings throughout the week. I mean, I live in Stowe, 35 minutes, so the more meetings, the better. So we can get the process going. It's really getting the information back and forth and how we turn that decision cycle around, so we can make it work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll make the schedules work, and we know it's aggressive, and we're up for the challenge. And, I would say also that, it's when you deliberate, and I know you have to make a decision fairly quickly, obviously, you know this just as well as I do, but make sure the firm that you're interested in selecting has the capacity and the depth to make sure that they can meet the schedules. There's a lot of work out there right now, both on the public and private side, and, I would say just make sure there's enough depth to resources, and they will be putting those resources to bear to make sure that they deliver on those dates, because we looked at it, and we have a lot of horsepower. We have 900 people. We have about 50 in Boston, but you just want to make sure that they're going to be committed to that, because that's obviously it's important. Those dates are hard dates, and we're prepared to meet those. And actually, we had a discussion out in the hallway just before we came in about this, and we have the manpower, and also, if we have to do anything extra time, extra hours, to get that done within the time frame you need. I know you can't change a lot of those dates. They're hard dates. I'm here to make sure that kind of thing happens, and I'll make sure that you have all the resources you need from us, and I'll commit to that personally. So, for whatever that's worth.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
There's a couple others. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I won't take them. You mentioned the use of Revit 3D modeling. Is that something you use on all your projects? I mean, would you use that here? Would that be an integral part of a presentation?
Absolutely, and it's not really any cost increase or anything like that. And in fact, it accelerates the schedule as well. We do interior scanning, exterior scanning using drones and so forth. Actually, the interior scanning, if we do that, it's accurate down to a 1/4 inch. We actually use that in the design development drawings. So it's real nice. And it's a 3D representation that you can use in town meeting and with user groups and so forth, and it's very impressive. We can actually put some audio to the clips that we didn't have much here today as far as that, but it's really effective and important, especially to get buy-in from the town and other stakeholders. That's a huge element, and I'm going to let Tom speak to it because he's more knowledgeable about this.
Yeah, so this is just an example that we were working in a downtown hospital, and 3 floors. If we would do it the old-fashioned way, we got the existing drawings, we got our laser, which looked pretty high-tech, and our measuring tape. It would take about 60 person-hours to get it, and typically we send 2 or 3 people to do the measurements, got back to the office and say, oh shoot, that was that one critical dimension forgot to get. So we went back and redid it. We have this scanner with our group, and one person spent 4 hours, scanned 3 floors, and it's 100% correct. So with that, we have the software to convert it into the Revit model. So it's not just the speed, but it's the accuracy. We can crank out a door schedule in about 10 minutes with all the existing doors, correct sizes and everything. Mm-hmm. And with that, we build onto the design.
That's good.
And just to answer your question, it's everyday use for us. That's part of our process, and that's kind of integral into our how we perform the work.
And then one last one is a site survey included in this? Like a land survey included in this as a. I know you have your Meridian consultant here. Is would that be included, that level of detail?
Yes, but I'll let him speak to it.
Yeah, so we have professional land surveyors on staff.
Yep.
So any property lines, or if we had to get to that extent, but to build off of the 3D aspect, we have a drone that has a scanner on it, and that scans in 3D. We can take that, we can do about 100 acres a day. I know it's not that size, but we could scan the building and the exterior. We mentioned the campus aspect. We could do that 3D scanning and, say we were going to take that addition down and put the field in. We could take the 3D scan, build the 3D model, and then actually take it out and show you what the field would look like, the parking lot. That's all, it's very powerful with the stakeholder buy-in. Take that to a town meeting and say, here, it's not just, we're not telling you what it's about, we're not showing you in plan, here's what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
One thing, just if you don't mind, I about the time and schedule and also the price, one thing I neglected to mention was the more sub-consultants you have, obviously, that increases time and cost as well. So, we really pride ourselves on a one-stop shop. We have one sub-consultant, which is great, Meridian, but when you introduce more and more layers and levels, especially with the sub-consultants, it definitely, if you're looking at, time, effectiveness and cost effectiveness, it adds, a little bit of both to it. So if you have a compressed schedule, and you probably know this already, the fewer parties and sub-consultants you have, the easier it's going to be, the less expensive it's going to be, and the quicker it will get, into your hands. So that's just another thing to think about that, we pride ourselves on. Everybody is down the hall from each other, like steps away. So, it really is effective, especially with a fast-track type project.
Thanks. Sorry, guys, I took a lot of time. Go ahead.
You had mentioned full-service firm, you have a lot of in-house capabilities. You did mention subcontractors, civil and landscape architecture.
Yeah, one
lab
firm,
work,
right?
subbed
Yeah.
out. I don't know what percent, do you have an idea of what percentage that would be of your response to the RFQ, of how much is subcontracted?
Did you break that out or have an idea when you were looking at it?
A percentage of the involvement from the civil site. I would think that as far as the level of effort, you mean?
Well, the percentage of what the work done is going to be subcontracted out.
As Brian mentioned, our only subcontractor, so to speak, is Meridian, and they do civil engineering, utilities, landscape architecture, surveying. So I would just say probably 5 to 10% of the contract is going to go to Meridian. I know the focus is on the building. Sorry, John.
Is that on camera?
We know the focus is on the building, the different use groups, different occupancies, but we do understand that one of the concepts is to knock a wing down, so that opens the opportunity for possibly a ball field there, parking, some landscaping. So the civil will be involved with those aspects of the project.
Another question I had was, you'd mentioned 24/7 potential operational during construction. I didn't know if that was something you could expand on, if that's more of something you'd have to look into versus how many opportunities you've had that to continue the building to be operational
Yeah, operational.
during construction.
So the key thing is the communication thing. So we will have our staff on calls so that if something comes up during construction, obviously they're not going to do construction at night or on the weekend too often, but what we're trying to get at is that our staff or whoever is responsible for the construction phase, that you can reach someone, and then there's a second person to respond to issues. And with the technology that we have access from the laptop, access to all the documents for the project. So I think it's more coverage.
Do you want to mention the hospital experience?
Yeah, so a lot of us have worked on healthcare projects, so obviously it's 24/7. The hospitals don't close, so when we do the design, we need to make sure that's design, construction during occupied spaces. So we manage and communicate these other plans, buy-ins from the different groups within the hospital. So I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of our practice. That's another piece of it, including the public sector. So we're very much used to the restraints and the constraints and restrictions of working in an operating medical facility, hospital and so forth. And those requirements are obviously very stringent. And so we for design and construction phasing, we're very, very cognizant and aware of that. And we have to make sure it is actually actual, very precise and airflow and containment and all that sort of thing. So I think that's what you're asking. So for construction within an operating facility, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I'd say we have quite a bit of experience. We could cite, I'm sure, hundreds of examples of that, both on the design side and also on the construction administration and also on the construction side with our, design build arm of the company. So we're very, very in tune with that.
Thank you.
Can I do a follow-up?
Oh, yeah.
I'll follow up to my response. So now I understand the question. So as Brian was saying about the medical facility, so one thing that we have to do is, we got used to do is to the architects, engineers, the contractor, plus the clinicians, which is really, in that case, the users, infection control professionals. We got together in the beginning to really map out what are the potential disruptions, when are the shutoffs, and all those things come together that during each phase, that should be the minimum support necessary for the remaining of the building. So as Brian was saying, we talk about dust, noise, vibration, security, and safety for the staff and for the users.
So, thank you.
That's what I was trying to say. He's the architect, I'm the engineer, so.
Other than our aggressive timeline, are there any other challenges you see in our process here?
Other than the aggressive timeline?
Yeah.
Any other challenges aside from that? I would call them challenges. It's just obtaining from the town any available documentation that we can have. It's great to have it before the kickoff meeting so our team can study all the existing documentation, come even better prepared to the kickoff meeting, and also having that ahead of time as well helps the team when we're out on the site. So if we're looking at a drawing and being a structural engineer, if I know you've got open web joists here, I know the building has some steel framing, has some wood framing, and such. It's very helpful to have that up front, so when we go in, we can do a quick verification that what's on the as-built plans or the existing plans exists. If we see something in real life that's not on the plans, we measure that up, we can scan it, so we can have accurate as-builts, which is very important when you're doing the space needs, trying to fit your program into the existing building. We can make sure that the new program accurately fits with what's existing. Other than that, no, I don't see any worries.
The architect wants to just have the last word. I mean, it's a challenge in a good sense because if the option of putting an addition next to an existing building is always a challenge, how to tie the two structures together. We want to blend the new with the existing, but doesn't look like the new building is really an old building. So that kind of challenge, how do you integrate? How do you make sure that the new structure still fit into the town? And how does the old structure with the different programs, that might be columns in the wrong spots. Sorry, Ed, it's always columns in the wrong spots. But how do we make the existing structure work with the new program? So it's a challenge. It's not a problem, but it's something that actually we look forward to resolve.
Yeah, all right, sorry, the engineer's gonna get one more in. And the only other thing, I think you already know this, this has been looked at for 4 years, maybe more, and there are a lot of different options that you're looking at and you're considering. I think you've narrowed it down to a handful, and obviously it's just making sure that there's, of course, buy-in, on and clear direction on the exact option that we're looking at, to make sure that to the extent possible, everybody is on board with that. And, I think out of the gate on the front end, that's probably the biggest one I see. I read through all the studies and everything that was put together. Is quite a bit of information there, as you know. I'm sure you've lived this for several years now. So, we support you in that. We'd be part of that solution. We'd help drive that to make sure that, it's the best possible solution for the town and for everybody here.
So that access to this site is the same access to the middle school, high school. Do you have any similar experience on a project where it would have a school access and other uses, and how you'd approach that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to not look at you, I just wanted to get
Nope.
this attention.
So you're asking about
Traffic flow
traffic flow,
and,
sure.
yeah, security.
Yeah, we could, I don't know that you'd actually have to do a traffic analysis. Try to start with anecdotal information. But there's signage, wayfinding, there's different methods that we can use to bring that campus aspect to the project. You can do speed calming things, to get the chicanes come in and tighten things down. There's many different things we can look at.
Would you incorporate that into your design?
Yes, that's going back to the campus aspect of looking at not just the building and that site, but the surrounding area.
Yeah, I'll add on to that a little bit too, because when I actually used to do work, I did traffic, and that was one of my areas of expertise. And we look at it, holistically, like on the site and exterior to the site. Obviously, any traffic studies that you have done, we make sure we assimilate all that data. Circulation within the site is key. That's probably the most key to make sure there are no bottlenecks. The traffic calming, as John mentioned, is definitely important, especially in these types of areas with mixed use, multi-use, that sort of thing. But we definitely, that would definitely be included. We definitely look at that, the parking, the traffic flow, and so forth, and that's critical. And I think so because I used to do that a lot. So I have a special interest in that.
Thank you.
So we're kind of at the end here, but anybody else have anything else that they have burning?
I'm good.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and just the architects got the last word. So we are really we are ready to start, and again, just one phrase, one-stop shop. So we have all the services that you need for this project, and we can deliver the schedule.
Thank you.
On the schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it too, and were we able to answer your questions completely and fully? If do we leave anything unanswered? I just want to make sure there are no dangling participles or, loose ends, or we didn't answer anything correctly or accurately, or hit the answer that you're looking for. Everything? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
All right. And you can always, email us if more information is needed, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with whatever you need.
Great, appreciate that. And just as you're packing up, we'll be making selections over the next few weeks. So we'd expect to, Heather will be reaching out to you in that time frame. I don't want to say in the next few weeks is a broad term.
Yeah.
So translate that how you will. But we're looking to move on this as fast as we possibly can. So
Yeah, we looked at the schedule.
you saw the schedule.
Okay, so it sounds good. If you need anything else, just feel free. We're a phone call or an email away. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Lamb, I'll be applying for Medicare next week. It's not old, it's experienced.
I put mine in last week.
Did you really? I hear the process is fairly simple. If you go online, you
It
just
is.
plug it in.
My mother said it was really easy.
Yeah. Because we don't need anything.
So you have one more, and then you can go home.
All I just need is regular Medicare.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you too.
That's me.
Nice meeting you. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much. Have a good night, guys.
You too.
Drive careful.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I might have met your family at Trinity.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you look familiar. I do a lot of, I'm a civil engineer myself, and I do a lot of work in stuff.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
This is a library project going on.
Yeah.
I'm not eligible to work on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's funny you said that.
The capacities. The capacity of the firm is pretty impressive. That's what catches me.
Yeah.
They actually would have fewer subs than Taipei had for the school.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Or if you need to be closer to that and the cord doesn't reach, you can always move the microphone and
Yeah.
whatever's easier for you.
I think this is fine, and we want to be close to you, because we're talking to you. And I'm sorry, we should wait for Heather?
Yeah, let's wait for Heather. just-
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
We could do our introduction.
Want to do introduction?
Yeah, let's do introductions. That's a good idea. Go ahead.
I'm Tanner Cole, Planning Board Representative.
David Passios, Finance Committee Representative.
Mike Mackin, community member.
I'm Greg Roy. I'm also community at large member, and I'm the chair.
Brian Leighton, School Committee Representative.
And Damon McQuaid, I'm the Board of Selectmen representative and also an architect.
Good, nice to see you. And you would be the people most likely all the way through the process?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's called the TCP, TC Passios Committee, so
Right.
you're here from
Yeah.
all the way through.
Yeah, and so the committee, as you heard, is made up of a representative from the Planning Board, Finance Committee, School Committee, and Select Board, a representative from each of those boards, and then 3 community-at-large members, of which Mike and I are each one of those, and there's one member that wasn't able to be here tonight as well. So it's sort of a cross-section of the various boards in town and community at large, so. We just went through our introductions.
And you probably already know that stuff, so we're ready to go here. So my name is David Eisen. This is my partner, David Pollock, and this is Annie Steele. David and I have been running Abacus Architects for
decades, and Annie's been with us for years and years and years, working on very similar public projects, some studies, design, all the way through construction. And we very often sit in your seats. In my spare time, I'm in the Mass School Building Authority Designer Selection Panel. So twice a month, I pick architects for any school that's funded by the state. David was on the Brookline Building Commission for 10 years and on the school committee for 6 years. So he's done his share of interviewing architects. But even more important, we understand the responsibilities that are on your shoulders and on your shoulders, whether you work for the town or you're a volunteer. People are looking towards you to steer things in the right direction, and our job as architects is to make your life easier. We have a whole team, and we didn't bring a structural engineer, civil engineer, mechanical engineer. You know, could have brought them, but we didn't. They will be there when we need them to look at the existing building, to make proposals and do the work that needs to be done to get accurate cost estimating for the work you choose to do.
And the team of engineers that are listed along the bottom of the previous slide are all consultants that we've worked with, again, for years and years and years, a close-knit team, and in fact, we're working on similar projects with other municipalities with all of these consultants, and we can take questions about them if that comes up. We are very familiar with, we are public architects. We work primarily for municipalities, and for local housing authorities, and for many, many communities around Lunenburg. We're currently working with AIR. We did a little community center in the house for the housing authority in Leominster. We just completed renovations to the Old Town Library in Harvard, and we are working on 2 projects in Winchendon and just finished up renovations to their library. And that's just kind of, those are our public clients out this way. We have many more around the state, and particularly the eastern half of the state. A lot of it is adaptive reuse. We've done adaptive reuse on a number of public school buildings. Let's see, we could probably, didn't mean to do that, just trying to get the pointer. A school in Concord, a school in Beverly, and we've done a lot of planning for similar projects. And for instance, this is the plan for the school in Beverly, where we actually removed the cafetorium and the gym, which were in the middle of this large mass of a building, and created a courtyard so that the building can work both outside and inside, utilizing the facilities that are available.
Let me ask you a question. We have a handout. In all of this, we tend not to give the handouts at the beginning because then people are looking down and shuffling, but you might be able to see it better. Would it be useful to be able to look at this right in front of you?
Or should we leave it with you when we're done?
I think it'd be helpful.
Okay.
Personally, yeah. I appreciate that we'll try not to look down too much, but I think especially for a slide like that, it'd be helpful to be able to, take a look at it.
Yeah, because it sort of fades
Yeah.
into tones of gray from a distance. So David, can keep going, but
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So you've set out really clearly a series of tasks that give an overview of the scope of work that you'd like to accomplish, along with a proposed schedule. And again, this is where the handout's really helpful, because nobody can read the text on there. But the key to task 1, which is integrating design and all of the other tasks throughout the duration of the project, and taking on all the responsibilities of communication. So really, the essence of task 1 is just communication. And the way that's shown on this slide is this continuous task 1, the yellow bar, which is communication at every level. It's communication with department heads. It's communication with whatever stakeholders we need to, with our consultants that we need to bring into the process at the appropriate times, and it's communication with you. So again, these
markers, these orange vertical bars, are periodic committee meetings. And they could also be larger community meetings or workshops or whatever. But those are meeting with you on a regular basis, could be every 2 weeks, could be every 3 weeks. We've just set up a rhythm with the new project we're doing in Winchendon, which is every other week, but alternating calls with face-to-face meetings. We'll work all that out so everybody's time is best used, and in particular the committee's time, right, with volunteers and everything. So, this is a committee meeting from a couple months ago in Middleton, where we're working on both a town office building and a community center. This is a community forum in Air, where we're working on a senior center, larger scale, bringing in the community. And then this is actually town meeting in Lincoln, where we, as I think is indicated in your RFP or RFQ, that to anticipate potentially appearing at two town meetings. So that's what we did in Lincoln. At the first town meeting, we presented the 5 sites that they were choosing between. And we presented the analysis that we'd worked on very carefully with the committee on the slides, and then all 600 town meeting members got dots, they got stickers, and while we were presenting, they went up to these sideboards we had on both sides of the room and voted for the site that they most preferred. So we actually came out of there with direction from town meeting on how to move the project forward, and of course, that kind of buy-in is also what underpins funding down the road. It all starts with programming, and we actually brought some of the survey questionnaires the most recent version of it, because we just delivered these last week in Millis, where town offices are in a school that was out of use for about 6 years, and then in the late 90s was turned into Veterans Memorial Building. All the town offices are on the second floor and the first floor, and then the ground floor is the senior center. And our starting point in the study with Millis is to work with every town department, and in particular, because that project is primarily focused on the senior center, but they share the building, to go through a careful survey to analyze the space needs of every department. And we can do that more dispassionately and analytically, scientifically, so we don't ask them how many rooms they need or what size the rooms are. It's really all about what are their staffing needs, what are their scheduling needs, and how do they use small meeting rooms and conference rooms and large rooms, and how much interaction do they have with the public. And there's a couple of surveys we've handed out. One is a just general town department one, which goes to each department head. And then there's one for the senior center, because that's really focused on expanding the senior center, so that one's a much more detailed one. So, and I would imagine that potentially for this project, we might do a customized, we would have one for all the town departments that might look a lot like this, but we might have a customized one for the school department. We might have a customized one for the after-school program. And also, we can give these to the town, to Heather. They can pass them out. You can process them. We can also do them with the stakeholders. We can sit down with them in groups, one at a time, go through the survey with them. It's not, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So whatever the best way to gather the programming information is, so we can right-size all of the facilities. So this is a series of, sort of pieces along the way when we worked with the town of Lincoln, and it started with a very detailed hourly, daily schedule for all the activities that go on in the programs for Parks and Rec Department, for the senior programming there, so that we could look at where the bottlenecks were, so that we could really right-size the number of multipurpose rooms, program rooms, meeting rooms, based on the actual usage. So that they could be used all day, all night, and that then eventually got translated into a detailed program. Then we can start looking at adjacencies on how to utilize space best. And again, you've got a pretty rambling, large building, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity in both space utilization for efficiency and also adjacencies to build efficiency and community and communication
within the community, within town government, within the town.
So one thing I didn't know is probably pretty obvious by now is we've structured this presentation task by task. Oh.
Thanks, sorry to do that to you. You can
Okay.
pull the mic down if you need to.
Okay, there we go. You structured this task by task per the RFP, how we see this unfolding. I mean, it's probably pretty clear from our titles. Another thing I want to note is a lot of work has been done to date. You know, we don't want to repeat the same work that's been done, but we feel like, you know, when we take over, or whoever takes over, the weight is on their shoulders. They need to be accountable. So we're certainly willing to start back at the beginning for things like programming to the extent that it's not counterproductive and not repeating work. So the next task was to review existing conceptual plans. So we've taken a quick look at the plans, and I was at the school. It was really great, you know, taking a little tour, seeing what it looks like. So we've done, as David said, we've done a bunch of school adaptive reuse projects. We've done a bunch of municipal projects. And we hear very similar things in town after town after town. People want their municipal buildings to be warm and welcoming and light and bright and open because they were in the town next door. They just got a new town hall, and that's what they saw, and that's what they want in their town. Or they went to their kid's brand new school, which is light and bright and warm and welcoming, and they're grown-ups. Why don't they get that? Why do kids have all the fun? So that's one thing we hear. Another thing we hear is we want it to be safe and efficient and have wayfinding be easy. And these are all reasonable requests. So in our experience, schools are often poor fits for municipal programs. And you can sort of see, it's typical school. There are a bunch of classrooms, and those classrooms are too big for a single office, but they're too small for several offices and other uses and open offices, so a group of people in a department can work together. So some people have offices that are too big, some have offices that are too small, if they want to talk to their colleagues, they want to go out in the hallway. So, you know, the plan on the left is the way the building is right now. It's also a lot like the building is $9.5 million later, according to those plans. You know, and we understand, you know, one of the wings might be cut off because you don't need the space. But the school, from what we've seen, is essentially the same before and after the renovation. And certainly there's a lot of HVAC work, there's a lot of asbestos remediation, but potentially from a citizen and voter and taxpayer's point of view, yeah, this looks like a lot like it did before, and it's still not meeting my needs. It's not light and bright and warm and welcoming, and I still got to bounce around from office to office trying to find the person I'm looking for. So what you see on the right are, it's hard to say minor modifications, but what might be affordable modifications to the building. So what we're suggesting is you tear out some of these walls that divide people who should be working together from each other. And so this is big enough for the school department, this is big enough for rec, and, you know, this is big enough for the after-school program. People can work together in an efficient way, and it's conceivable you can get more people in less space if you organize things effectively. And then, instead of walking down the hallway, this sort of endless, I hate to sound mean-spirited about the school, but a kind of dark, claustrophobic hallway, you walk down the hallway, you see this little blip. You see there's a desk there. You see there's a little place to wait. There's a bench. There's a place to get out of the way if you've got the baby carriage and someone else has got the walker and you want to pass each other. You create a kind of interesting environment that's not only more pleasant to be in, but easier to find where you're going to, because you go up to the desk and you say, I want to meet with, and then you engage in a way people have become accustomed to. At the end here, you know, these are, you know, they're cut off from the daylight. So you could remove a wall here, put a glass wall in there, so the light enters the hallway, so you can look out, so people inside are connected to the outside, so you make the kind of lounge conference spaces where people want to be. And, these courtyards, these are underutilized assets. These really could be terrific green spaces, again, that connect inside and outside. These are the kinds of things we would look at, because we really believe you fit the building around the people, you don't fit the people around the building, and the plans as we've seen them are more about fitting people around buildings. Now, does this cost more money? Absolutely. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't cost more money. You got to do the asbestos remediation. You got to get up-to-date electrical system. But you also want people to get the sense that they're getting bang for the buck. And what we're suggesting is we would lay out opportunities like this. And we want to hear from you and the departments. What are the opportunities? What are the costs? What are the benefits? So we arm you to make the decisions as opposed to suggesting, well, this is all we can do. So what does this look like in real life? I didn't try and make these pictures look bad. It was a gray day. But even in the blue sunshine, I'm not sure that's the great face of a building. And, these skylights are actually pretty cool. I mean, I know a bunch of them have been covered up, but, it's not warm and engaging and inviting. These are the kinds of things you could do on the interior to make places for people to be with each other. This Framingham Library, this was a bunker-like building, so we redid the landscape. We put this whole entry piece. It's also 5.5 feet up in the air, which is a challenge you don't have here. But we reconnected the building to the downtown area. So these are the kinds of examples of the things we suggest you ask your architect to look at.
All right. So my name is Annie, and I'm a project manager at Abacus. And so David just talked to you about some conceptual design ideas we had, and I'm going to talk to you about kind of the boots on the ground and how we're going to get this done for your project. So here you can see we'd start with task 3B, the evaluation of the current building envelope. And so along with your extensive existing conditions report, we would have ourselves and the consultants go on site, and we'd do our own little evaluation, check out the building, do some exploratory demolition. In doing that, we want to open up the walls, in particular the exterior walls, to look at the condition of substrate, structure, mechanical systems, interior walls, floors, ceilings, and just double check, what are we working with here. And also we want to make sure that if there are any issues with the existing building, that we get these issues resolved in our documentation going forward. That way there's no surprises during construction, because no one likes those. And then the other thing about reviewing the building on site is to look a little bit at the energy performance of the exterior walls. We could probably come up with solutions that you can look at life cycle costs and do some analysis there. So after we look at the current building envelope and go on site, we would start looking at the actual site itself beyond the building. And so we want to look, the building as it is now on the site is clearly not going to move, but the site itself could be developed in a different way to be functionable with parking and looking at the different traffic patterns nearby. And so I wanted to show you some examples of projects we've done in the past. So the first one here is for the town of Lincoln. And the major site concern here, we were placing a new community center within a block of existing town buildings. And the main focus here was access for cars and parking, but we wanted that to be separated from the children's play areas, which were also very important to that school area and community center. The second one shown there is for the town of Carlisle, and there the site selection process had to do with making sure the community center was located adjacent to the ball fields and other fields that the town owned. They wanted people that are visiting these fields to be able to use the community center's facilities, such as their bathrooms, waiting areas, and parking. And then the last example there is for the town of Mansfield. And that's the Council on Aging, and it's located in a prominent downtown site next to Town Hall. And so with that project, we were able to take the town's needs into consideration and address some parking issues they had, so that the parking lot on that project is a lot bigger than it needs to be to address other town parking issues. Another nice thing we were able to do with that project is next to it is a really nice town park, and then on the other side of this property is the town hall. And As it is now, there's a public walkway through the park, and then we basically connected that path to the town hall so that there's sort of a loop that goes around the town center, goes to this property. So we would be looking at the existing school site to see, in the bigger context of Lunenburg, there's a school nearby, there's a library nearby. How can we address maybe some issues, some space needs that they have into this building and bring this site together as a whole in the community and not just look at it by itself? Okay, so we got the current building, we got the site evaluation. Now we need to start working on an actual plan. And so what you see here are some, the end result of the 3 projects I just mentioned for Lincoln, Carlisle, and Mansfield. And so what we did there was we had a lot of meetings. This is the final product, but what you don't see is all the meetings that went through the process. And we talked a lot about, David Pollock mentioned we had those surveys for the towns. And in those surveys, there was a lot about access and adjacencies, different contexts. And so what we would do is we would work with you to figure out all those parts and pieces. And then we would, work on developing this plan in order to have something to show to the cost estimators. We ultimately want this plan to show what the cost is going to be of this building. And so we'd also take into consideration, our engineers would have been on the site, they're going to have recommendations, they're going to look at the structure and the mechanical systems, and they're going to have input with the layout of the building possibly. And so we would develop a plan like this for your building to pass along to our cost estimator.
Yeah, in both of us, MSBA and Brookline, we understand at a certain point for schools, you do a set of drawings, money is allocated, and that's it. There's no going back for more money. So our assumption is that's what you're looking for. The Vertex report talks about all the problems. You have some conceptual plans. You want to lock in a body of work and what it costs so you can keep it moving. So I see some heads going up and down like, who wouldn't want that? So, the plans she showed were kind of pretty plans. There are much messier plans, and that's what would buys out the project with mechanical systems and structural, really solving the problems that Vertex identified. So we are suggesting that you ask your architect to come in with a number of different options at different price points with pros and cons and costs and benefits. How do you find the right direction? I mean, they're qualitative issues. You can put a dollar sign against it, and they're the quantitative issues. They're qualitative issues that are about quality of life. Is it a warm and welcoming, or is it bunker-like? Somehow you have to compare qualitative and quantitative. So this is what we call a decision-making matrix. Here are a bunch of different options up at the top. There are a bunch of different factors, and you look at the pros and cons. Green is really good, red not so good, yellow somewhere in the middle, and then you look at the costs. And, the costs are down at the bottom. The more thumbs up, this is really great, you get, probably the higher the cost is. But this enables you to just look at all of these kind of right next to each other, figure out what the bang for the buck threshold is, how much money you want to spend, what you're going to get out of it. So we work with our clients every step of the way in finding their way through the thicket of costs and benefits. So you can go to town meeting and say, we have done our investigation, we believe this is the right way to go. And then implementation. So there are many aspects to implementation. I mean, it's looking at schedule, and it's looking at budget, and there are cost estimates, and there's, figuring out how you're going to work with the town, with the taxpayers. But, a lot of it is about meetings. So you note that there are 3 meetings and 2 town meeting presentations from the architect. So in some towns, right from the very beginning, we reach out, we have public meetings, we want to hear from the taxpayers from day one. That's very much up to you. I mean, we don't dictate public engagement, but we're ready and willing early in the process to listen to what people have to say, to have people voice their opinion on the different options. Or it may be you want to steer the boat, and it's only towards the end that you want to bring the public on board, so we'll work with you. But we have a lot of different ways of engaging the public having them feel like they're being listened to, and then getting them really excited about the way forward, because it's painful writing that check. They got to feel like there's something exciting for them in it. And that's sort of our story about how we think we can get you from the beginning to the end in successful ways. And we'd love to hear what your questions are and fill in anything we might have left out.
Awesome. Oh, change it up. We'll go this way this time. We'll go. We'll give you a chance to start. Dave.
Sure.
That's all right. Am I putting you on the spot?
No, not an issue. I think the biggest challenge we recognize is the time frame that we've allocated for the design process here. But other than the time frame, what are some of the biggest challenges you see in the process?
Well, do you want us to note that the time issue? Yeah, because we've thought a lot about it.
Sure.
I can take that. So, again, when we were working with the town of Lincoln, we, with the committee, came up with that essentially a 12-month schedule of in 2 whole increments and arcs that led us to a couple of town meetings. You have a very compressed schedule, and I mean, candidly, we have a lot of experience with responding to RFPs with very, very compact schedules in the RFPs like this, and very often that's actually not what the committee's after. They've set a tight objective within their ask, and they want to know, can we perform within that schedule? And the answer is yes, we can perform within the schedule. But then they say, well, but actually we'd be more comfortable if we were shooting for a special town meeting in the fall, because we have more time to build up political capital with the community or whatever it is. And our answer to that is whatever works for you. We will, and it necessarily, if the process takes longer and we take longer, there's a little more time invested on our end, more meetings and everything, but it's completely okay. I mean, you tell us what the pace, what your objectives are, what hurdles you want to hit, if there's an election you want to hit, or a town meeting you want to hit, and whatever your needs are, and we will craft a schedule to your needs. And the schedule that was on here wasn't, that was just sort of looking at 13 weeks. One of the things we will do right out of the gate, even as we come to a kickoff meeting, probably not at the kickoff meeting, we'll really want to ask a whole lot of questions and work through those at the kickoff meeting. But immediately after, we will produce a highly detailed schedule and matrix to get us through all the meetings and all the stakeholders with lots of questions about, well, how do you want us to work with department heads? Do you want that to go through you? Do you want us to set up a series of meetings, come to your regular staff meetings for briefings? It's all this kind of stuff in great detail, and we can work to whatever schedule. In terms of what the other challenges for this project are, I think it's really getting a firm, you've done a lot of work. The Vertex report is a good capital needs assessment. You've got a lot of beginning detail. We've got to test a lot of that and come up with a baseline cost estimate for whatever, for the nut, whatever it is that we got to do to fix the building, to do the abatement, to get new systems in place. That's not easy because we also have to calibrate energy performance, and there's probably a pretty big cost range in terms of where we can go with how much we want to save you in operating costs on the building by investing in, better mechanical systems and more insulation. And, I don't have the knowledge about what's going on with the roof and when that needs to be replaced and how much insulation is up there right now. I don't have a recall of that, but there's a fair amount of detailed work that needs to get done to understand the base cost for the project. Also, how we need to do all the programmatic analysis to understand if we're keeping the whole building or if we're reducing the size of it, which has a demolition cost, but ultimately a lower cost project than renovating the whole building. Once we right from the start, we will be doing the creative visioning work and coming up with ideas for how to build community within the building and bring departments together and make community space that it meets the needs of the larger community, and multi-generational pieces, because you've got an after-school program and whatever programming you want. We'll be doing all of that visioning, but in order to set
the bar on how much we can actually invest in it, how much we can spend on it, we need to quantify the baseline of all those nuts and bolts pieces. So I'd say that's probably a big challenge on it, is to understand the musts so that we can then find out how much within your budget money is available for the the vision, for the wishes, for the things that we don't need to do to make sure that the building is safe and solid and meets the baseline need.
So, surprise, surprise, the two biggest challenges are time and money. None of us have ever heard that before. How much time is too much time? How much is not enough? How much money is too much and how much not enough? Those are challenging questions, and our job is to put options on the table for all of that stuff so you can make the best decision possible. And those are challenges. That's hard work.
You had mentioned sub-consultants at the beginning that you work with. What percentage of the work that presented in your response to the RFQ will be performed by the sub-consultants?
Well, Vertex did a pretty good job of identifying problems. And so that's a really interesting question. And we've been talking about that, is trying to figure out what needs to be put on the table. Am I right in saying what you want is a set of drawings and specifications that can give you accurate prices, right? That you can live with, which means digging in. All of our engineers have to dig into systems. All of them have to do some level of design. So,
And at DD, it's something beyond that, but we're not bid ready, we're not at construction documents, but we're beyond the basic schematics, which, because we work with in a software platform called Revit that nearly everybody works in now, but it's 3D modeling, and the day that Annie and her team start on this project is the day we start building our Revit model. So right from we're essentially on the way towards construction documents from day one of building an existing condition set of plans is really a full 3D model of the building. And so it's we're getting to some point where the primary objective is the confidence in the program and plans and the layout and the cost. Are we right? That's kind of what, because you want to then be able to get all your funding in place, your borrowing authorization from town meeting and whatever whether it's is this in the capital, is this in the CIP or is this override? Or
that piece needs to be figured out.
so it's possible that you can fund it without debt exclusion, but not necessary. Not necessarily true. It may need supplemental funds. So anyway, those are the tools you need.
But I would say something around 60% architectural and 40% consultants. That's where it tends to be. This is not just schematic design where we'll have a page and a half narrative. I mean, I think we would need some pretty substantive stuff. If construction drawings are, 55% architectural, it's probably a bit more on this, 60-40, something like that.
Right. Thank you. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, life safety, all of that is going to be a big engineering component of the work. Structural will be there throughout the building, but mostly what we're going to be trying to do with structural is avoid structural because we don't want to trigger seismic and if possible, we don't want to go beyond the limits of modifying structure that would potentially trigger significant remediation and all kinds of stuff. We can quantify that. And then civil, I don't really have a feel for, right? Because it could be relatively modest, or civil could get quite extensive, depending on how much needs to be done for site utilities or potentially site work.
That kind of touched on one of my questions. So do you see including a land survey as part of the civil component to this? phase of work, or is that something that you do usually in the advancing from DD to construction drawings?
No, you need a survey early on, and so, sure,
That's part of your, would be part of your scope of work.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly haven't done any kind of a detailed fee analysis, but there's a significant, set aside significant funds for this. So if the question is there enough money to include in the overall A&E budget, survey, which generally is an owner cost, it sort of sits off to the side, but can, within the monies you've set aside, can it be partitioned that way, and can the survey be paid for out of these fees, these funds? I think probably there's enough money, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing we could negotiate.
Yeah, right.
We could do more MEP and architectural if civil isn't taken out of it, and if it is, we'll make it work.
What's squishy is this, the ending point is design development. Because classically, and because we were trained, we were drawing with pens and pencils, right? But and when that was the case, each phase of an architectural project, you started over with the paper. You'd do schematic design, and then you'd set those drawings in the drawer, and you'd get blank pieces of paper, and you'd start out again with design development. And when you completed that, you'd start all over again with blank pieces of paper for construction drawings. Now, we start on day one with one set of documents all the way through. So DD almost, in a lot of our projects, it almost doesn't exist. It's just like a highway wave on the way to completed construction drawings. Because we're already starting on construction drawings pretty much in schematic. I mean, we're doing all our layouts in schematic, but we're already thinking about details. So it's kind of a pre-construction set where we have typical details, not all the details, where we have typical, we haven't done every last layout in every room, but we've done enough for the pricing. And so there can always be, if we need the survey, if we need to spend monies on something else, we can sort of stop DD a few hours shorter and make sure those other things get funded to work within your AE budget.
But you have original construction drawings for this building?
Yes.
I think we do.
Something to work
Yes.
with, yeah.
Yeah, so there may be a pretty complete civil, and may want to do some verification, but conceivably, the building's not from, 1897, there's pretty accurate information there. So that's, first thing is like, what do we got to work with?
Just real quick, I also want to add, David Pollock was mentioning that we use Revit in our office, and so from day one, we're working on kind of something that turns into construction documents. That also means that we're modeling all of our ideas, so the plans you saw on the screen here also have like 3D components of how it would actually look, and we can easily show you our ideas and get stuff on the board, so you don't have to try to visualize it, you can actually see it. We'll be able to print stuff out and show you our ideas as we go on in 3D as well.
That's great. Thank you. This is kind of a tricky question to verbalize, but of the projects you've worked on with municipalities that are in our same boat, where we've allocated a certain amount of funds to do this study to get us to as you've identified, we are certainly looking for a construction cost that we can live with and present to town meeting. So, of the municipalities that you've worked with that are in going through that same process, can you talk a little bit about this, about maybe the percentage of success, your success rate, if I could say it that way, and the things that you did throughout the project that you think were really instrumental in sort of allowing the town to buy into the project?
On some level, I mean, I'm also a town meeting member in Brookline. When you actually have to run for election to be a town meeting member in Brookline. There's 240 of us plus the select board and our any state reps that live within the town.
You should consider the Framingham solution.
Well, there was always discussion. Now we're the biggest town in Massachusetts, didn't used to be until Framingham converted to a city. I mean, the image of every town meeting member
sort of picking a site was also, with a sticker, was also every town meeting member in some sense voting for a project. They aren't really, but they're still at town meeting, they're saying, yeah, if we built this center here at Ballfield Road in that case, next to the school, which is kind of the same campus that you have. I mean, it's interesting, in Lincoln, there isn't a commercial center, and there's sort of the crossroads and the old town hall and stuff. But when we asked throughout the town, what's the center of town, everybody said it's the school. It's called Ballfield Road, but there's the two schools around it and the school administration, and that's where they have town meeting and everything. And they were like, yeah, put it there. That's our town center. That's where we come together. So. And it got a thumbs up. I think communication is the key early, often, understanding, us working with you working with key stakeholders. So it's great to have a member of the Board of Selectmen at the table, right? It's vital, and a member of the planning board, and a member of the school board. And who the thought leaders are in the community, who the key players are, the influencers, and you also know where the sort of thorny patches are, and if there's going to be resistance to funding, who you need to talk to. And so whether it's invited meetings everything's a posted public meeting, but you can still reach out to individual people to get them to a meeting. We just had a meeting. We're doing a little project for the one of the elementary schools in town of Harvard. And the elementary school across the street's getting torn down and being rebuilt for I don't know how many tens of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the middle school is getting no love. And so we're doing a little project over there, and it was being presented to the school committee. And I talked to the superintendent and said, I really think you ought to get invite everybody from the finance committee and get them there, and anybody else who's going to have questions about this project when it comes to the capital planning committee, get them to the presentation. Let's get their questions out. Let's get them talking to the school board. So getting boards talking to boards, and also department heads talking to departments, or all the boards together. Get the police chief and the fire chief in there talking when you're also talking about site planning and road reconfiguration, because there's this great notion of building of really using these monies in some way to also think about the larger campus with Turkey Hill School, is that what it's called?
It's the middle school, high school, and then further, and it connects.
On the other side, right, and the middle high school, no, I know the middle school, high school, and the library. Maybe it involves road reconfiguration, but that's a great opportunity to get DPW and fire and police in there into a larger conversation about the town and all working together, and that's all money in the bank in terms of, ultimately getting support for a project and getting funding.
But David really didn't quite answer your question. So Lincoln got a thumbs up, Randolph didn't get a thumbs up, because police station, fire station, they had a school coming up. People just said, multi-generational community center, love the idea, but you know what? It's just one step too far. Yeah. So that didn't get support. Medfield, they're doing a school, and we're doing a recreation center for them, and they're sort of saying, let's slow this thing up, because until we get the school resolved, we're not sure people can, vote for the money. So
right. So in Medfield,
I'm not going to say we win them all, and sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Us and the people who we've been working with. Yeah. And David's line is, let's give this the best shot possible, and then at a certain point.
Yeah. No, but we're doing well in Medfield. We just had a community forum, community workshop, and that community workshop was supposed to happen spring of 2019, and that was supposed to happen fall of 2019. We finally did it January of 2020, but the resolution that came out of it was a few things we can do this year, but really we're waiting for the MSBA project, which it's the same site.
and the school's gonna move, and then we're gonna rebuild and expand the rec center. But we're working on timing in terms of, all the different stakeholders in the town and the politics. And the upshot of it is, we got hired there for, a significant study. It's not as much funding as this, but six figures. And we just sent out, a year and a half in, we just sent out a bill to 20% of the whole fee, because that's all the work that has made sense to do. We're keeping our powder dry. We're not really sure exactly what our project's going to look like. So we haven't done the traffic study, and we haven't brought in, the structural engineers and done any of that development, because we're pacing the project according to the politics of the town. And that's why I was saying, short schedule, long schedule, we will walk with you the whole way, generally, without reconsideration of fee or whatever, we'll do the work as it needs to get done to underpin the success of your project.
In Middleton, it's a public safety complex, it's a new town offices, and it's a community center. So it's being phased. That's a lot of work. It's on a 50-acre golf course. So it's being phased, and we hope people buy into the whole public safety, that it's not just fire station, but so this may stretch out over 10, 12, 14 years. I don't know that it makes sense to phase this, but that's another way to work with people. Ease the pain and, have priorities.
That's great. Thanks. I'm good.
I have a feeling that you've already answered the question that I've been assigned to ask, but I'll give you another bite at the apple. If you could explain your proposed approach to delivering a cost-effective solution to the town? I think you've walked us through your approach to that thus far, but I'll give you another bite at the apple.
I would say there are two components. There's the cost, and there's the effectiveness, the pros and cons. Here's all the great things we can accomplish, here are the costs associated with them, and then ultimately it's up to you to decide which is the most cost effective. It may be the cheapest, it may be the most expensive, because you get more bang for your buck. So I think it's really an incremental laying out the options and working with you to define what cost-effective really means. But if you don't have the cost and it's not effective, you can't do cost-effective.
I'll add something. What I talked about earlier, and I maybe didn't speak succinctly enough, because it seems like I went on and on about figuring out the base work that needs to get done. And that's kind of working from the bottom up. And I did talk about the vision as working from the top down, but there's another way of thinking about this kind of the vision or working from the top down. It's actually something that I learned from an architect named, one of our colleagues in Massachusetts, an architect I really admire named Bill Rawn, and who does public work. And in fact, as chair of the Brookline School Committee, hired him to work on our high school. And so worked with him from the client's standpoint there. And what Bill says to his clients is, we want to work with you on a focused discipline of picking three things that are of the highest value to you for this project. What are the three most important things to accomplish? And that's where we're going to put our money. That's where we're going to put our focus in terms of added value, in terms of whatever that is. So whether that's the community space or there's a side of the building that really needs to look better. It can be aesthetic. It doesn't have to be aesthetic. It can be programmatic. But we will work with you to articulate and define your values, not our values, of the three things, 2, 4, whatever, but the three things that are going to really make this project successful. And then no matter what, we'll get the HVAC done, but we'll also get those three things to work. And then the rest of the budget we'll manage to make sure that we get the base done and those great things done, so everybody feels really good about the project.
Thanks.
Given the age of this building, construction was 1952, 53, and commissioned in 53. Can you verify that your proposed scope of work will include a complete hazardous materials assessment, mitigation plan, and cost estimate?
Sure, absolutely. Did we put a Mardib and UEC on our team, or is that something that, the consultant we've been working with for years and years, one of probably 5 that we work with, but the one we work with most is UEC, and they're very easy to work with, they're very thorough, and they include all the components. Now, that having been said, again, my experience, because we've had 41% growth in our school enrollment in Brookline with no new subdivisions or anything, so we've been doing an immense amount of schoolwork. And working in the old school buildings, we have discovered hazardous materials that it would be extremely hard to discover through a normal investigation. In other words, we've taken up concrete floor slabs, and in between that floor slab and another floor slab underneath it, there was, asphaltic material that was asbestos containing. And so I think there is a conversation to be had about the extent of destructive testing that we need to do and we want to do in the building. And I think that would also be very interested in talking to people that know the building really well, if there's still, retired custodians or custodians who aren't retired or working in other schools that know the building very well. It's a good place to start.
And one of the things, PCBs in, let's say, window caulk, if they're PCBs in window caulk, you need to remediate as opposed to asbestos that you don't immediately have to. So there are always questions. Do you want to test and then be forced to remediate within a set period, or do you want to hold off until a later time? I did notice all that 9-inch by 9-inch tile. There's a lot of 9-inch by 9-inch tile, so a lot of work. And I'm sorry, I forget the name of the gentleman who gave me the tour. He said he thought there was asbestos pipe wrap up above, so.
That's probably Mr. Londa, the facilities director.
What's that?
Mr. Londa, the facilities director.
Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Could you walk us through a previous project that you were involved in that involved renovation where you had several different community uses sharing the same space, and talk a little bit about the challenges you faced? In this building, we've got school uses, community uses, and things like security comes up, and how you layer the building and make it functional.
So the question is about the future uses in the building, not about construction, phasing, and swing space.
Exactly.
It's really how
The
do
finished
you
product.
integrate those. It's a great question, and the place where we are talking about constantly, because in so many communities, there's a real desire, instead of isolating the senior center, to do a multi-generational community center. Mm-hmm. And so you've got kids, you've got after school, all of these more active uses, and then you have the seniors that on the one hand want to interact but don't want to get run over by a bunch of kids running down the hallway. I think that there's a lot of ways to approach it. You can approach it in multi-story buildings. You can approach it sectionally. You can also have centralized entries and circulation, and then move in different direction for different programs. An example of, do you have an example of?
Middleton, and working with HKT Architects on this, there's the public safety complex, and the fire department, the police department are actually talking to each other, because very often they don't talk to each other. They don't want to share anything. They're talking to each other and sharing, and then there's town hall and the senior center. So we get people to talk to each other, find the common ground, help them understand that there's yours and there's yours, but you can share and everybody benefits. And I hate to say it's like kindergarten, but it's like kindergarten,
Could you just explain 4 programs, but actually what the town's moving forward with is 2 buildings?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
each one is a combined building?
Yeah.
Public safety is a combined building. town hall, community centers, or combined
Yeah,
buildings.
thank you. I have a picture of it in my head, but you obviously don't. So I think it's that, like that last slide with all of those meetings, find out what people are afraid of, find out what they're hoping for, calm down the fears. So I think, in Cambridge, in the community facilities we did on Ringe Avenue, this is part of a much larger project, a housing development, but there are a series of different programs. And common ground, shared interests. What's your bottom line that you want for you? Shared kitchens. Does every department have their own kitchen? Do they share a kitchen? It's a conversation. Does that kind of answer your question? I think Middleton might be the best example, and it's worked pretty well. No fistfights have broken out. And reading the RFP, I know school is an important component. You want to move essentially all the town offices into the school. Is that or is that in flux? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's a whole bunch of them. Okay. And maybe one more reason why it's not divvying up offices, why you tear down some of those walls and not say you get 6 classrooms, you get 4 classrooms, and you get 3 classrooms. That I don't think is necessarily a way to find that common ground.
I think there's a real opportunity, an interesting opportunity, to try to understand the shape of town government. I mean, with all of the town offices, but also the school, all of the school, the superintendent's office and that staff, and then community spaces. What is the face of this building and the face of the town government as it meets the citizenry? And who come in, because the after-school programs can give you a ton of interaction with parents, with families coming through, and then the community program, which isn't really well defined in the RFP, but I guess just hasn't been explored yet, how many square feet it is, what the uses are, what the appetite for that piece is, and fitting that in, sort of where's the center? There may be multiple centers. And then that can be played out in terms of where are the doors and where's the parking and where's the kitchen, like that. Eventually it manifests in the articulation of rooms and programs, but it can really be explored on a level on an organizational level of what is this larger organization that's an amalgam or some kind of a consortium of organizations that have relationships but aren't all part of one thing.
Well, one good thing, I stepped on the poor school's toes in what I said before. All of those wings, you could actually treat them conceivably like separate buildings. So one thing is, where's the common ground? What do you share? Another thing is you say, there's this wing and this wing and this wing and this wing. And this is the preschool and the after school. This is school committee. You could even have each one has its own entry and its own bathrooms. And you warm them up and they never even talk to each other. Conceivably, that's an even better direction than let's find the common ground and kumbaya.
Right, what is the identity of Lunenburg? Do you want to all be one big kumbaya family, or do you really each want your own home and get your work done?
But they're like 4 sides. You get a parking, courtyard, like you would never even know those guys existed. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but it might actually be something to think about.
So you've visited the site, so you know the access to the site is the same access to the middle school, high school. Can you explain in your experience, you talked a little bit about traffic flow analysis in some of your projects, how you'd incorporate that into your design, or if you would incorporate it into your design?
One thing that's interesting, a lot of our buildings are tight urban sites. This is like really spacious compared to, like Weinberg House in Brighton, where, just we didn't have an inch to spare. So my answer, you may have a different answer, my answer is haven't thought that much about it because there's a fair amount of space there. And there's clearly, there's got to be a way to do it. I don't know, I weaseled out of answering the question.
I think it's worth the attention of a traffic consultant, of a traffic planner, and maybe, I mean, I haven't delved into the reports as deeply as these guys have, but I think it's worth looking, if that hasn't been done. And it doesn't, I mean, most of the money that traffic consultants earn is trying to entitle projects and, doing traffic counts and proving that there won't be congestion, and then everybody says, oh, you're biased, it doesn't count anyway. But they actually have a deep knowledge and understanding of traffic systems, and I think there's a lot of municipal uses as well as non-municipal uses in a very close area, with essentially a driveway functioning as a major artery through the middle of the site and all the parking lots. And I think it's worth, when we founded our firm 31 years ago, we called ourselves architects and planners right from the start. We both studied architecture, not planning, in school, but we really design at every scale and think nothing of taking on site planning with our own pencils, but we also deeply rely on our engineers and our consultants and their expertise.
My memory of the numbers, you talked about 16 people work here and 12 people work there, and these are pretty small numbers. And then it was like, oh yeah, but 124 students show up for a school-related program. Now, they're not coming in 124 cars, and maybe they're all walking, but certainly kids, first of all, is a huge safety issue. Buses, and so I would say the school-related uses are probably the ones that wave their arms for needing really close and careful attention for bus maneuvering, for parking, where do you go in and where do you go out. So that's probably the number one place where we'll really sit down, plot out what's needed, and lay out, and consultation is needed.
Just as an aside, having been involved in the construction of the middle high school, we thought that the long driveway would accommodate all of the cars that were coming to pick up students. Well, it's still backing up into the Massachusetts Avenue, so.
Right, I think it's the middle high school and undoubtedly there was a traffic study done at that.
There was.
At that time, but it would be a good place to start with that analysis, yeah.
Anybody else?
All set?
Okay.
You guys have worked hard tonight.
Well, yeah. So have you, we know that.
We love to work with you. This is like the heart of the town. I mean, you're building the future of the town, and that's, we love that kind of challenge. Questions, answers after tonight, happy to, whatever, let us know what we can do.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, we appreciate it. We'll be deliberating in the next few weeks, and, you can we're gonna be moving that as fast as we possibly can.
It's only 9:15.
Yeah, right, we got some more agenda items, so no.
Okay,
But
yeah,
I just
again,
wanted to tell
happy
you,
to supplement
Heather will be
this.
reaching out to you, and we really appreciate you coming out. Thank you very
Great,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okey dokey.
Yes, please, thank you.
Be great, thank you.
You're just gonna hold the button, yep, and then if you're
Very
loose.
impressive AV system here. Never seen anything like this.
So, it's 9:15, so I didn't want to have a detailed discussion on evaluation of candidates, but I put it on there in case we wanted to have any discussion of that this evening.
My 2 cents is we'd be best served to
I think you're right.
to make that a agenda item of another meeting.
I agree. I just didn't want us to be looking at each other and want to say something and not be able to because we never agendas item. So I'm happy to do that. That'll obviously
Well,
be the.
and to generally say, I'm very pleased with the
Yeah.
the presentations that we had tonight, the caliber of the folks that came in.
Yeah, I was too. Yeah.
Yeah, just the only thing that I would say is I hope we can try to do that next week and not drag it out. I mean, you said over the next couple of weeks.
That's
but-
what I want to talk about. The biggest thing I want to talk about here is the future meeting schedule. Mike has already indicated we do not have any minutes for this evening.
Correct.
I have not done the minutes for last meeting, so we have no minutes to approve this today. Anybody have any new business? Okay. Future meeting schedule. Yeah, so do we want to continue on the 1 week, every week here until we get this done, or what do you
I
guys?
think we're kind of locked into this until we get this
Yeah,
done.
just looking at the proposed timeline too, the award of the contract is the next date, February 10th.
Yeah.
Award of contract.
So I think
We're
that
already a week behind.
the 5th or the
Yeah, we're a
6th.
week behind, yeah. so-
Yeah.
So I'm I'm happy to do it. I think either of those nights are fine for me, so however many people we can.
What, next week?
Brian, you've got
Next
a,
week.
I just have the school committee meeting on the 5th, but it'd be most likely at 7.
Greg, I'm out of town all next week, so you guys set the schedule
Okay.
the way it works for you guys.
Anybody have anybody prefer Wednesday over Thursday, or should we try for Thursday?
Wednesday's better for me.
Wednesday's
but,
better for you.
is 5:30 better than, it's
six
always
is-
been tough.
Yeah.
Next Thursday.
You
Just,
can't do
Okay.
next Thursday.
Give it a shot.
Okay, so there's 2 no's for Thursday, so let's go for next Wednesday.
Okay.
And then, should we just, so our normal would be 2nd and 4th, is that what we decided on? I know we haven't had them really. Should we just pencil in then February 12th? And, maybe we can skip the 19th and go to the 26th, and we'll see where we fall on the 12th, if you want to add another one in there.
I won't be here the 12th, but
You won't be the 12th? Is there another day that week that works, or are you out that whole week?
any other day is fine. Oh, Board of Selectmen on Tuesday, but
Yeah.
again, I can
13th would
duck
not
out,
work for
doesn't
me.
matter.
13th doesn't work for you, so it's looking like we just stick with the 12th, we just stick with the Wednesday. Is that acceptable for everybody?
Sounds good.
I'm sorry, could you repeat those?
So we
Wednesday-
would do.
Wednesday the 5th and Wednesday the 12th,
Yeah, Wednesday the 5th, Wednesday the 12th, and then.
6 PM.
Okay. Just a reminder, in case you guys discuss the week of the 19th, that is a holiday week, so watch out for
School
the
vacation.
posting
Right. I was kind of
on
thinking.
the week
we'd s-
before.
I was kind of thinking we'd skip that and we just pencil in the 26th as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So we'll key in for 3 meetings for February, the 5th, the 12th, and the 26th.
The only other question I had was how we're going to handle the checking of the references.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit last time. And the committee thought it was appropriate to put that squarely in my lap and your lap.
Green time budget.
Yeah, I know. So it's probably gonna fall on my lap, I'm guessing, because I know you're in,
I can,
but why don't we talk?
use the assistant town manager.
Okay.
To help with that as well.
So if it's acceptable to the committee, I will coordinate with Heather's office on how to do that. And unless anybody has any strong feelings either way, we'll sort of discuss and determine between the two of us how we'll get that done. It won't necessarily be all me or all Heather or the assistant or both, but we'll try to.
I think in our previous conversations, there was a concern that it not be all one or the other, and what you're proposing works fine for me.
Okay. That makes sense. We'll just talk with you offline about how we'll do that.
quick timeline question.
Yep.
We've got the February 10th deadline.
That's what I had in
Now,
the
is
proposed
that-
timeline.
Yeah, it's in the.
Award of
proposed
contract.
Schedule, but we're already a week behind.
Yeah.
Well.
But
It said
from a-
finalist interviews were the 22nd, 29th.
Yeah.
So we're towards the end.
But from a procurement standpoint, do we need to make a decision by the 10th is what?
No.
Okay, all right, so we can drag it out, we're not,
Hope we can, I hope we can arrive at a decision
I
next
hope
week.
we're.
I
I would
would
think,
think- yeah,
I
I
would
would-
think we can do a
uh,
decision next week, I mean, yeah.
I'll try to send some comments to the chair
Yeah.
before that meeting. I'll have access to send
That'd be great.
information where I'll be, so.
Okay, that'd be great.
the reason I bring it up is the references are part of
We
the
need to, you know,
evaluation, and as a committee, we're not gonna be party to any of that until the meeting,
yeah.
right? I mean, unless there's some means by which you can do the reference checks, summarize it, and then distribute it to us, but we can't discuss any of it, so.
Right.
Just food for thought, as long as we're not on a timeline that, you know, we've gotta make the decision.
Yeah.
But
And, I don't know, correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong too, are we making the recommendation to the town manager, and then the town manager would have that information to decide?
Well, we
You're
make
ranking.
the recommendation for who to select, and then the town manager negotiates with them.
With them, okay.
So should we, just make sure we all have a copy of that, scoring rubric next meeting, so we can.
Absolutely. I mean, almost to the point where I think, for me personally, I'm gonna try to come with what I think my numbers are. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Without a doubt.
And not to say I can't be convinced, and then we'll almost kind of come up with I think that'll streamline things. We'll kind of come up with more of a composite. I'm not saying that we're gonna come up with a 3.63. We'll figure out what the number should be
Yeah.
collectively, but I think if we all
It's a tool.
do
It's
that,
not-
yeah. So I'll commit to working as fast as I can, however we do the reference check. So would the board like me to summarize, like a summary, whoever does it, of the discussion of each reference? Is it,
I think it's not, I'm not.
or do
I
you
wouldn't
want me
need
to summarize that in the meeting, verbally, or Heather and her crew?
In my opinion, I would say just a scoring rubric, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then be able to discuss. You don't need, wouldn't expect you to send like meeting minutes of your conversation with each individual.
That's, I'm just trying to be clear, I don't wanna.
We're looking for you.
Okay.
Talk to me, give
Okay.
thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay. I mean, I'll do the best I
No one's
can
gonna
to
give
see
a
if we
thumbs
can
down, but,
get, what, as much as we can get, you know, on my end, Heather and I have to coordinate it, but, I should be able to carve out some time to do that on my end.
I
I'm
mean,
not sure
frankly,
about
we'd expect
Heather's.
that if you've been listed as a reference, you're going to be.
Yeah, you probably, yeah.
You're probably not going to list somebody that you left
That
on
that
bad
didn't, that
terms
didn't
with.
like it, yeah, right. So, but at least you get to hear a little bit more of,
Right.
you know, how they implemented their approach and that kind of thing. So. Okay, good. Is there any public comments from the public? Seeing none. Any additional public comments from the committee members? Okay, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.